Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started. Welcome back from recess. We're going to start back up our budget hearings. Before we start, I just want to do an introduction to all of our council members here today, starting off with our council president, Z. Cohen.
Mr. Chair.
Also, do we have committee member, Vice President Sharon Gray Middleton from the 6th District. From the 6th District. We also have Mark Parker from the 1st District. Councilwoman Felicia Porter from the 10th District. From the 14th District, Councilwoman Odette Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
From the 11th District, Councilman Zach Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And from the 3rd District, Councilman Zach Dorsey. Ryan Dorsey. It's been a long day for some of us. Ryan Dorsey. Before we start, just quick housekeeping for committee members and for council people. For each round, we're going to do 2 questions and 2 follow-ups. And then depending on how much time we have left, we will probably draw that down. DOT, Director Macbeth, the floor is yours.
My apologies for being tardy. I had to pop in with Council Vice President. Good afternoon. My name is Veronica Macbeth, and good afternoon, Madam or Mr. Chair, Council President, Madam Vice President, and members of the committee. I am Veronica Macbeth, the Director of Baltimore City DOT. I was appointed and confirmed earlier this year, and it's been my mission to improve the quality of life for Baltimore City residents since my time starting here. I want to begin by thanking the 1,125 hardworking women of BCDOT, represented by leaders from our different services that join me here today. They are out in the community every day, working to make Baltimore a better place for our residents, businesses, stakeholders, and visitors. BCDOT and its staff are the stewards of the city's massive transportation grid. Our agency maintains over 4,700 lane miles of roadways, including 305 bridges and culverts. Our network includes 540 miles of collector streets, 1,460 miles of local streets, about 8.1% of statewide vehicle miles traveled occur in Baltimore City roadways, amounting to 3.5 billion vehicle miles per year. Further, our agency maintains 3,600 miles of sidewalks, 1,100 miles of alleys, and about 79,000 roadway and pedestrian lights throughout Baltimore. We maintain over 1,300 signalized intersections, over 250,000 traffic and informational signs, and over 4.5 million linear feet of lane markings. Finally, we also operate the Charm City Circulator and the Harbor Connector and oversee the city's very successful dockless scooter and bike program. So by law, BCDOT is tasked with building and repairing streets, bridges, and highways. We're also charged with the maintenance of streetlights, alleys, footways, and the conduit system. We manage the movement of traffic, inspect construction in the right-of-way, and develop sustainable transportation solutions while maintaining a large portfolio of federally funded projects. Longer term, we have been working year over year to improve our service delivery, having leveraged various sources of funding to remedy hundreds of ADA ramps citywide. Last year, we constructed nearly 400 ADA compliant curb ramps in 2024, and just this year alone, we've already built 150. In recent years, BCDOT has taken a more active role in supporting our community needs through community placemaking initiatives. We have incorporated art in the right-of-way as part of our traffic calming projects and to beautify and to add the unique charm of our distinct neighborhoods. We have provided extensive support to community events that make our city a regional and cultural hotspot. Now, during my short tenure as director, the agency has taken significant steps towards improving the quality of its services. We have begun to staff our waterfront operations this year. We've hired a harbor master to oversee the use of city-owned facilities in Baltimore City, and the harbor master will ensure our facilities are used and maintained properly while generating revenue through user fees and docked and moored boats. Also, I want to highlight our automated and red light enforcement system, which on I-83 alone yielded a 78% reduction in crashes northbound and an 86% southbound within a mile of the speed cameras. This year, the state removed the sunset on the I-83 cameras and authorized the installation of 2 additional cameras. And with this caveat that only 1 in each direction may be operational at any given time. The legislative victory will ensure that we can continue to improve the safety along one of the region's most important interstate highways. BCDOT is responsible for administering 17 distinct complementary services ranging from parking enforcement to roadway maintenance and resurfacing. Who has the clicker? Oh, okay. Service 500, street lighting. Our maintenance division houses street lighting. Over the last year, the maintenance division street lighting section has installed electrical hookups for all major events, block parties, and all special requests from the mayor's office. All events requests were installed on time, and the street lighting section has not missed a deadline despite facing vacancies and severe supply chain issues. The street lighting section also led BCDOT's efforts to relocate Artscape to the downtown footprint. In fiscal '26, Maintenance Division will focus on creating electrician positions with the street lighting section and work on ordering materials to maintain an adequate and sustainable inventory levels. Service 548 is conduits. And over the last year, our conduit division has inspected approximately $34 million of BGE-led conduit capital improvements. This includes electric manhole rebuilds, rehabilitation and reconstruction of conduit duct banks, and repair of duct obstructions. We've stood up more proactive and collaborative meetings with DPW and vicinity on how to better address conflicts that typically arise when they work around our infrastructure. The conduit division, like all of BCDOT, is hampered by supply chain issues. But for fiscal '26, our conduit division will continue to inspect improvements for the conduit system, for example, capital, developers agreements, and TR contracts. We'll populate the conduit asset management database with more recent, up-to-date conduit builds and hold accountable contractors that work on the conduit system without the requisite right-of-way permits, and work with our street cuts division to issue the applicable fines. The next service is 681, which is our administration service. And this service provides executive direction and support functions for the agency, which includes communications, human resources, contract administration, fiscal services, government affairs, civil rights, our ADA compliance, and community engagement. Our next service is 683, which is street management. And this service is in the maintenance division and also conducts all of the city's internal resurfacing through the service, which consists of milling and paving. However, the division, again, has struggled with staffing. Finally, maintenance is focused on starting to work on our orange cone list, finalized a month earlier than last year for an on-time construction season. The next service is Service 684. This is traffic management. This service provides for the design, installation, maintenance, and inspection of the city's network of 250,000 traffic control signs and devices. The service ensures roadways are safer for pedestrians, motorists, and cyclists. Some of the tasks performed conducted traffic impact studies, overseeing capital projects to upgrade traffic signals, and maintaining traffic control signs and devices. Through the street management service, the maintenance division has installed speed humps at 144 locations for a total of 487 speed humps over the last year. Notably, under my leadership, we have updated the traffic calming 311 service requests to specifically remove speed hump requests so that all potential options can be considered when needed for traffic calming. In February, we launched a new public portal with this, special events services is Service 685. In February, we launched a new public portal. With this, the special events team was able to eliminate redundant rekeying, improve communication with applicants, and provide additional transparency through the online portal. Also, it improved collaboration with the health department and fire department to disseminate updated guidance for street truck vendors. In the coming year, the special events team will engage partners from surrounded jurisdictions to learn about the best practices that their special events processes are developing to improve things here at home. Service 687 is Inner Harbor Services, and this service falls primarily under the maintenance division and that provides the maintenance of public right-of-way in the Inner Harbor. And this work covered includes lighting the promenade and maintenance of the bulkhead, the finger piers, and water and utility hookups. With the harbor master's officer reinstated, we are working to rehabilitate our finger piers and refurbish utility hookups through the use of capital funds and collaboration with partners like BDC. Service 688 is snow and ice control. So this snow season, we experienced 2 back-to-back storms, coincidentally, within the first week of me starting here. The maintenance division provided oversight and coordination for the plowing and salting of city roads during every snow event through contractual and in-house forces. And the residents' feedback this year suggested that this was one of our best snow season performances to date. Our focus will improve our snow program by further incorporating city works into operations. We will also look to extend our brine program into residential neighborhoods. Service 689 is vehicle impound and disposal. So this service primarily is administered by towing division, and over the past year, towing has reopened its administrative building, which had been closed for 3 years, launched the Aries Auto Return Inventory System, which is at the Pulaski and Fallsways lots. It established a 24/7 operating hours at the Fallsway lot, extended operating hours from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. at our Pulaski lot, and added 5 new tow trucks to its fleet to increase our productivity. However, the division requires additional staffing to provide better support for our 24/7 customer service at its Pulaski location and has limited capacity for the towing of commercial vehicles. So finally, towing's focus this year will be obtaining more CDL drivers to fulfill our towing needs in-house, striving to keep the lot occupancy to 90% or lower, and obtaining an additional location to store larger commercial vehicles and abandoned vehicles, and refining our 24/7 towing operations. Service 690, sustainable transportation. And this service supports multiple transportation alternatives in an effort to reduce dependence on single occupancy vehicles. But more specifically, it supports the Charm City Circulator and the Harbor Connector and our micromobility program. We're buying 8 new buses with the assistance of a federal grant. And thanks to the successful micromobility program, Baltimore is one of the first cities in North America and Europe to see Lime bikes deployed by Lime, a vendor that is permitted under this new program. Notably, these new e-bikes are sturdier and will accommodate more body types. Service 691, public right-of-ways landscape management. This is our maintenance division landscaping section, and it maintains a high level of timely abatement for landscaping service requests. Service 692, which is bridge and culvert management. This service provides for the ongoing maintenance of bridges and the federally mandated operations of the Pennington Avenue and Hanover Street Bridge bascule spans, which are opened and closed at the request of the U.S. Coast Guard and marinas. So under this program, DOT was able to quickly respond to a very old and leaning retaining wall that was quickly, safely removed and replaced in Locust Point. A bridge currently classified in poor condition is being addressed using this program to repair all of the severe defects and thereby extending the life of the bridge. In fiscal '26, we intend to focus on making more repairs to bridges that are listed in poor or fair condition and to extend their useful lives. We don't have sufficient funding to address the deferred maintenance burden associated with the many bridges that are due to replacement and that are here in the confines of Baltimore City. We are limited to the expensive piecemeal repairs as a result. Service 693, parking enforcement. This service provides the parking enforcement citywide and is primarily administered through the Safety Division. BCDOT recently switched its parking enforcement operations to a 24/7 schedule, resulting in an uptick in the issuance of citations and abatement of abandoned vehicles. Additionally, we have rolled out progressive parking fines for residential parking permit areas to improve compliance. Next is Service 694, which is survey control. And survey control is provided by 9 staff members who are responsible for developing accurate survey points used by civil engineers, title agents, and developers, and others. And this data support effort is prepare roadways, bridges, and designs, residential and commercial development projects, and sale and acquisition of property for municipal use. Service 695 is our dock master office, and after 6 years of vacancy, this office was finally relaunched in November of 2024, and we hired Mike McGeady to lead the office as the harbor master. On May 7th, the Board of Estimates approved the new docking fees for our transient and overnight boaters using city-owned infrastructure to dock boats. And through the Harbor Master's Office, BCDOT has secured a $1 million in state grant funds for dredging ahead of Sale 250, and we have managed to negotiate a new wharfage agreement for cruise operations at Pier 5 at a revenue estimate of $50,000 annually. Service 696, which is street cuts management. This service is administered primarily through the right-of-way division, and the office oversees street cuts on the city right-of-way to ensure that all roadway is done safely and efficiently while minimizing disruption to the public where possible. The office issues fines to the parties which the cuts are in the roadway illegally. And over the last year, we have updated the city standards related to the storing of construction equipment overnight, subsequently making the contractors more accountable to leaving equipment in residential neighborhoods where there is a high parking demand. Last two, bear with me, Service 697 is traffic safety, which houses our crossing guards where we fabricate and install our traffic signs, and our ATVES, which is our automated traffic violation enforcement system, which is our red light and speed cameras. Service 727 is our real property management, which is operating under this service, our right-of-way division, and we've successfully launched our OpenGov public portal there. And then finally, just with my closing statement, well, I want to note quickly with the real property management, again, one of the glaring things that we've seen throughout this is the fact that we are short-staffed. And so within this particular group, although we've had 2 vacancies, there are 2 critical vacancies. It's in the land conveyance group, and there have been long tenured employees that have retired after 40 years, and we're actively looking to fulfill these positions, but there are a lot of technical components that need to be filled for these jobs, and it's been a challenge to do so. So in closing, Baltimore is more than just Maryland's largest city. It is the economic engine of the entire state. Our bridges, roads, sidewalks, traffic signals, and transportation networks are not only vital to daily lives of our residents, but also to the commerce, industry, and innovation that drive Maryland's economy forward. Yet today, that engine is under strain. Decades of deferred maintenance have left critical infrastructure in need of urgent repair. BCDOT is struggling to meet demand, and too many communities are disconnected from this opportunity. I am committed to working with all council members as we move into the new fiscal year and beyond. Considering federal challenges and massive deferred maintenance burden, it is critical that we are realistic about what we can accomplish. BCDOT will redouble its focus on the city's outstanding infrastructure needs through significantly expanding resurfacing and maintenance operations while exploring every possible means of securing discretionary federal funding for much-needed long-term capital needs. If our city fails to secure necessary capital funding in the long term, we may be unable to realistically afford the replacement of things like the Russell Street Viaduct, the Hanover Street Bridge, or even large swaths of I-83. The city was a pioneer in transportation infrastructure, but decades of disinvestment and population decline have put us in a bind. The funding we are requesting is a necessity. Without it, we risk stalling progress, widening inequities, and undermining our city's ability to sustain the very economic activity that fuel our state. This is a pivotal moment. As Baltimore's renaissance unfolds, we must choose to invest in a safer, more resilient, and more connected Baltimore, not only for those who call it home, but for the long-term prosperity of Maryland as a whole. We urge you not only to stand with us in this chamber, but to make your voices heard in Annapolis for us. The General Assembly must hear that Baltimore's transportation needs are equally urgent, and that investing in this city is investing in the future of the entire state. Too long are we forgotten to areas like Prince George's, Howard, and Montgomery counties. We are the area that has the most unique cause for investment, transportation infrastructure, and the economic engine that is the counterpoint to Washington, D.C. We ask for your support, your advocacy, and your commitment to ensure Baltimore can continue to lead, to grow, and to move for all of us. At this time, we welcome your questions.
Thank you, Director Macbeth. And before I hand it off to Council President Cohen, you can sit down. Yep. I also want to acknowledge representation from both the Mayor's office and City Council President's office. Council President Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Director. And let me just start by saying that when it comes to advocating for funds in Annapolis, you will have this council's full support. Just as slightly before your time, Councilman Dorsey led us in engaging, is a respectful way of saying it, the director of MDOT around the cuts that we were facing in this year's transportation budget at the state. And with the mayor, with our colleagues on this council, and with our amazing delegation from Annapolis, we were crystal clear exactly your message that don't come to Baltimore and tell us how great everything is and then have your budget not reflect it when we look at it. And I was really proud of my colleagues, but also proud to say that they listened and that those changes were reflected in their budget. And to me, it just demonstrated that when Baltimore stands together, we win. I want to first just thank you, Director Macbeth, because you are taking on a very challenging job. You are inheriting an agency with enormous operational challenges, as well as, to your point, capacity constraints and deficiency of resources. And that is a really hard thing to do. And I know you felt it in your first couple of months on the job, but I just want to appreciate you for doing that. We are proud to have you here, and your federal experience combined with being a local community leader, knowing Baltimore, knowing what Baltimore needs. I'm grateful that you decided to serve in this capacity, and know that the council is going to continue to have your back as you make the hard decisions that need to be made operationally within this agency. And I will say there are some very hard decisions that need to be made. I want to continue on a theme that has come up a lot during these hearings, and it is around overtime and vacancies. So the Department of Transportation reported $10.9 million in overtime for calendar year 2023 from the general fund, And then overtime rose to approximately $14.8 million in calendar year 2024. That was from the general fund. How much overtime is the department expecting to incur for FY25? Also, can you state how much in funding that had been budgeted in FY 2025 for vacant positions has been directed to cover overtime expenses over the course of FY 25?
Mr. Council President, I'm happy to help out Director Macbeth by providing the specific figures.
Absolutely.
So for fiscal 25, based off of our third quarter projections, the Department of Transportation was projecting to spend $12.6 million in overtime for fiscal 25. That it would result in an $8.6 million deficit. One of the things that I think is really important to note with DOT in particular is that a portion of their budget includes citywide snow costs. And so that deficit includes overtime costs that were associated with snow and ice removal this winter. And that would be not only for staff from DOT, but other city staff that were part of the city's snow response.
No, absolutely. First off, thanks for providing that clarity on the numbers. I will say, look, climate change is real. I think everyone in this room can acknowledge that. And the winters are going to get colder. The summers are going to get hotter. And so we have to adjust from a budgeting perspective and make sure we have the appropriate amount of available overtime to be able to address that very need. And again, I don't want to belabor a point that has been made several times throughout these hearings, but I also think it is really important that we are, one, growing our own workforce within DOT and limiting the amount that gets contracted out, which is quite a bit for this agency. And that two, again, that at the end of this budget negotiation, that we have a real sense of what are the real needs that the agency has, that the agency not be able to overspend its budget and then come back to the council for a supplemental on the back end. It is really important to me that we're operating in that spirit. And so my next question to you, Director Macbeth, how much are you budgeting for overtime in FY26?
As far as as I would say, specifically budgeting, I think we would note not looking to budget the 8.2 that Laura has noted. I think I can't particularly give you a number. What I would note is that as far as the overtime components that we are looking to do, is that we've instituted overtime authorization, some of the things that we had not been doing. I wouldn't say that there has been overtime abuse. I would say that there hasn't been an overtime protocol. Oftentimes there has been challenges with being able to calculate where the overtime is being conducted. We want to make sure that when people are conducting and doing work for DOT, if it's within our maintenance division, if it's within community engagement, if it's within planning, that we have a 3-tiered sign-off system where it's pre-approved. The staff then subsequently has the outline of the specific work they're doing. They come back, have that work signed off and show proof that the work is done, and then it's approved in Workday. These are some of the things we haven't been doing. We've actually activated it fully in the maintenance division, and we have been able to see some of the, I would say, positive turnaround, and where we're seeing more specific work conducted on weekends where we can see kind of qualitative and quantitative work that's being done versus when you say oh, I'm signing up to do X, Y, and Z, and maybe you're not seeing the totality of what is actually getting done. So I would say those are some of the things that's being conducted. As far as where we have been pulling overtime money from, it's also been being pulled from the existing vacancies, obviously to subjugate not utilizing overtime. We are looking to fulfill those vacancies. Currently, we have the fourth largest vacancy amount. Everybody knows that here. I'm not going to hide that number. It's within the budget information. We're actively having hiring fairs, more specifically the areas that we're noticing the bulk of the vacancies in. We are specifically working with Baltimore City Rec and Parks to have specific hiring fairs in those localities so that we are looking to hire in specific areas to help fulfill those needs. Separately, and I can pass it over to my counterpart, who is our chief of HR. We are even looking to begin sponsorship in the next couple months of an apprenticeship program that is backed and funded by the state for the first year that will also fulfill some of our vacancy needs. And so we are actively looking to, one, fulfill those positions, and two, also take a look at how we can slow down and ultimately have little overtime. I would say it's impossible to not have overtime, because if every emergency, holiday, and everything else happened 9 to 5, we wouldn't need overtime. But here we are.
No, fully understood. And look, I think we would be kidding ourselves to say there's going to be a complete elimination of overtime. That would never be the expectation. Where I think the council is really trying to get to is, let's have the honest conversation about how much it is going to take. Let's do some analysis of where we can look at trend patterns. We can look at, make some predictions about what the weather is going to hold, special events. I just think there needs to be a path to better control. I'm glad to hear, by the way, that improved system is starting to run in the maintenance division. When can this committee expect that type of fiscal control will be agency-wide?
We're actively piloting it in the maintenance division. I would say my goal is, within the next 3 months, we could look to make sure that is moving to happen agency-wide. Something I would like to
You said
know.
in the next 3 months?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry, didn't cut you off.
One thing I did want to note, and I know you didn't ask it, but I think it's a critical point to put forward. A lot of our overtime comes with our safety division as well. I think we recognize that. We support a lot of events, as you mentioned. A lot of events are scheduled events, but a lot of these events also happen for entities that are not paying for our support. So we have sporting teams, we have concert venues, we have universities. At best, some of them are paying very minimal special event fees. I can give you an example. One of the most recent special event fees that was paid was $750, and we put out close to $25,000 man hours. And to use a technical term, the math wasn't mathing. And so this happens annually, multiple times annually. So it's something to consider, maybe us revisiting, transferring a cost, a value cost for what our special events teams are doing for the fees.
I appreciate that. I want to close, but I do want to just lift up that point you just made. I think it is really important that, again, we just have a really honest conversation about what it costs the city to do these events, and that we have good dialogue with our partners about those costs. Councilmember Porter has been leading some really important work about the payment in lieu of taxes with the eds and meds. I think as we are thinking about renewing the pilot, as we're thinking about sort of what the city contributes, you mentioned universities, I just think it's really important that that we tell them and they tell us, and then we reconcile and we agree to a cost, and that we don't just shoulder the whole burden. Because as much as we love and want to respect our partners in the business community, private sector, public sector, all the different sectors, the city, and then I'll stop, but the city bears a lot of costs of people utilizing our roads, often as a pass through to get to work and then come back home, and does not pay for those costs in the degradation of our roads. And I think it's a similar dynamic when it comes to concerts, festivals, like all these other things that we eat the cost on. And again, what I would just encourage you to do in partnership with this body and the mayor's office is flag for us, look, we're taking on, we're about to drain a whole bunch of overtime. Let's have that conversation publicly so that we can advocate for you.
Absolutely.
Again, I really, Director, appreciate you taking on this very challenging task. Appreciate the women and men that work at the Department of Transportation, and hope, believe, and expect that the operational challenges, many of which I've heard lifted up in Councilman Dorsey's committee, will be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you so much, Faith Leach, City Administrator. I want to raise 2 points. So one, the DOT fees, so the special event permitting fees and all of the DOT fees will receive recommendations as a part of phase 1 of the citywide fee assessment. So we're starting with DOT and look forward to being able to have a broader conversation about those as we take a closer look at the fee study. But I wanted to address your point earlier, Mr. Council President, regarding how DOT is going to fill some of these critical vacancies and rely less on overtime. But in order to do that, I do want to reference a conversation that happened earlier about the salary study. So earlier in the HR hearing, we talked a little bit about the citywide salary study, or it came up. And as you all know, 2 years ago, we undertook this effort to modernize the city's wage structure. So it took us about 2 years to do it. We have a recommendation that we are actively in negotiations with our union partners on what this new scale will look like. We did share with the council president a copy of that salary study just a couple of days ago, so he hasn't had it very long, and have not shared that with this council and have asked that it not be shared. So I just want to publicly acknowledge that, but we will be providing a copy of that study to you all. Again, this has to be bargained for with our partners, and so we're at the table with each of our union partners. But what you will see in that study, and I'm happy to have the team provide briefings, what you will see in that study is that the city is finally embarking upon a modernized wage scale and structure. And this administration is very proud of what we are putting forward to our union partners. And that is going to help directors like Director Macbeth start to fill some of those critical vacancies. We have got to pay our people more. And I think we all realize that. And what we have put forward is what I think is a pretty aggressive wage structure and wage scale. And so we'll continue to have that dialogue with our union partners to make sure that it is the right fit for them, but it will help directors like Director Macbeth and a lot of our operational agencies start to fill some of those critical vacancies as we're starting to raise the wage on for our lower paid workers. Thank you.
Madam Minister, I appreciate you raising that, and I don't want to belabor the previous conversation, but I will say that I hadn't shared it because you asked me not to, and then when it was lifted up in a hearing, I did share it. And I want you to know that I appreciate our partnership. I appreciate you acknowledging publicly that the administration provided it and asked me not to share it, and then
Yeah, it was deliberative. And again, as I've mentioned, and, I stand in this, we have to negotiate these things and we have to bargain these things with our union partners. We're at the table with every single partner right now. And so, again, want to thank you for your partnership. And to, like I said earlier, we did share a deliberative document with you that we asked not to be shared. So I just want to take a second to acknowledge that before everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Administrator. And again, Director Macbeth, I really appreciate your being willing to take on a very challenging task. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that discussion. Before I start, I just want to give just a public shout out and recognition to all of DOT. You guys have started these monthly meetings with each council district, and through your leadership, I just want to give you a shout out because there were a lot of issues that were very persistent that we would talk about each and every month. And since these meetings started and since we had leadership at the table, a lot of those issues are being addressed and taken care of. So I thank you, Director Macbeth, for your leadership. Also, the whole team, Luciano, Asia, Damien, Miss Matia, I always have to give her a shout out. She's my constituent and my liaison. Tavon, to the whole crew, just a huge thank you for just getting, SOPs just in order. Just it's so easy and it's so reassuring for us to be able to reach out to a director that one, because you used to be a community president and I used to actually stand before you, I have to answer to you, you get it. You get it, you understand it, and you know some of the issues that every community has raised, and they voiced those concerns. I'm just happy to have someone, one that understands it, but just someone that is also from Baltimore and just gets it. So I just want to first start by just saying thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Now to the fun stuff. So 63% of traffic signals were repaired within 12 months of reporting in FY24. The target for FY25 and 26 is 75%. We obviously don't have the numbers yet for FY25, but what can be done to improve upon this backlog of traffic signal repairs? And I ask this because the constituents often reach out with valid concerns of safety due to traffic faulties or non-working traffic signals that they encounter each and every day.
That's a great question. I'm going to lead by asking our traffic management staff to take the question. Dan, are you nearby? And Dan is new. He's a new employee from State Highway Administration, so he kindly graced us by retiring and starting a new career here with us. Crazy guy.
Push the little button.
There you go. My name's Dan Mantic. I'm Chief of Traffic Operations. Like the director said, I started about 2 months ago, but I'm very familiar with the traffic signals. I spent 31 years with the State Highway, retired from there, and basically dealt with traffic signals and ITS my whole career. So as far as the response time is with the traffic signals, it's a couple of issues. One is staffing. So currently we're with our traffic electronic maintenance technicians, we have 5 vacant positions. So we currently only have 9 technicians total, and 7 of them are basically at retirement age. They're over 60 and they can retire any day. There's a couple of things I've been working with HR basically to fill those positions. But one of the things I found, I guess, when I started working with HR is all those positions for the traffic electronic maintenance technicians are at the 2 level, and we don't actually currently have a 1 level. The last traffic or electronic maintenance technician 1 was hired in the 1980s, and he's currently the superintendent of the traffic signals. So it's been very difficult to hire qualified personnel with the current job specs, because the two requires traffic signal experience, and that's a very difficult thing to come by. So I'm working with HR to reopen the traffic technician 1 position, so we can get basically some folks with electronic experience and kind of progress them to the 2 and 3 level. Which the 3 level, we're looking to maybe create that position also for the senior folks that do the very specific electronic maintenance work. Some of the other issues, our signals are, way beyond expected life expectancy. They're all 30, 40 years old or older. It's old technology. The construction of them aren't to current specs. So that's why you see a lot of the poles, signal poles leaning. The other thing is, when we have bad weather, wind, rain, the signals should have bottom spans on them. And I don't believe the city ever installed bottom spans when they did traffic signals. So what happens is the signs flip over
Dan,
the
can
spans.
you give a kind of a layman's explanation of what a bottom span is? And you don't
So
have to
the-
go into like deep explanation. Just
Gotcha.
give the,
Sorry about that. So you have two types of traffic signals. You have mast arms, which are the poles with the arms that go over the road. And then you have strain poles, like poles on the 4 corners with the wire. So that's a span intersection. So they all have top spans. That's where the signals hang from. They should have bottom spans, and that's where you would tether the signals and the signs to keep them from flipping over. So what happens is the signs flip over the top span and cut through the wire. So every time it rains, you have broken wire and it's shorting. And that's why when we have bad weather, all the signals go on flash. Not all of them, but a lot of them go on flash. So we're looking at a way to fix that. The problem is because the poles are leaning and they're not structurally sound, you can't jack a span or hang another span without pulling the poles in. And the other thing is MUTCD requires the bottom of the signals to be 17 to 19 foot off the crown of the road. And a lot of our signals don't meet that standard. So that we have a lot of signal challenges, basically. But as far as the other reasons, the vacancies, so we would like to have a 24-hour response for our traffic signal technicians, but we currently only have 5 field technicians that run out of the bucket trucks that actually fix the lights, and one of them is on light duty and can't get in a bucket truck. So we have 4 people. There's no way to do a 24-hour coverage. So a lot of times on weekends, we don't have somebody covering, a certain period of time.
And how many would you need to be able to run a 24-hour operation?
So Federal Highway has a posting or whatever. They recommend 1 signal technician for every 30 to 40 traffic signals. So we have 1,360 some traffic signals. We have another maybe 200 like flashers, not full-blown intersections. So if you take the 1,360 and you divide it by 40, it's roughly like 34 signal technicians, and we have basically 9. So we're way shorthanded. So there's other issues that factor into it also is we're down trucks. So when we put a person out in the field, we need trucks to put them in. Our fleet's like half gone. They retired 3 trucks that were from 2012 that they deemed that it would cost more to fix them than it would keep them to buy new. And the current vehicles, the bucket trucks, because they're a specialty item, it takes 4 years to get them in. So there's procurement issues as well.
Gotcha. And do you believe that, Director Macbeth, you talked earlier about the apprenticeship, and are we looking to have those types of apprenticeships for those specific jobs, the ones that we obviously need 34, if not 30, techs to be able to do our job at the current pace that we need it? Is that one of the career paths that we're looking into, or?
this particular job is not within those career paths. These are the ones that we are looking at. They are masons, cement masons, they're electricians, things of that nature. These are signal techs, so it's more of a technical capacity for this work. So it's, again, if we're looping back to some of the components of what CA Leach mentioned, it's also a pay issue as well when you're searching to fulfill these positions.
Understood. Thank you.
Councilman Gray, on this particular service and in a couple of other instances, there have been questions about fiscal 25 year-to-date performance data. And I just want to note for the council that the performance plans that are updated on the mayor's website, they include quarterly performance updates for all of the metrics that are in the budget book. So for this particular metric, you can go see the first, second, and third quarter updates. Those were refreshed about a month ago in advance of these hearings.
Thank you for that information. My second question, there's also a significant backlog in traffic calming studies, with these requests often taking a year to reach resolution. How does DOT plan to improve on this service when the budget only has a slight increase from fiscal year 25 to 26? And is this a contractual service, or does DOT perform these studies in-house?
I'll start with this, and then I'll pass over to Clea, our chief. But the studies are performed in-house primarily. Again, it's a staffing issue. I know we have a significant backlog, I believe close to 2,300 traffic calming studies that we are looking to have completed or looking to have been completed. Perhaps, but approximately 2,300 that are backlogged. Some of the issues, again, are the volume that are coming in based on the amount of staff that we have. Additionally, the duplicative nature of the locations that we get, how they're coming in, whereas prior to, I'd say the last 3 months, I would say arguably more than half would be specific requests for speed humps. And when you are looking for a specific type of traffic calming device versus a traffic calming study, it changes the guise of how you're able to conduct what you're looking for. You're oftentimes looking to see whether you don't need a speed hump versus what other traffic calming implications you can install versus not needing something at all, or if it's purely based on the driver. And I'll stop there. I'll allow Clea to jump in to give you more subject matter expertise.
Good afternoon, folks. Clea Baumhofer here, Chief of Traffic Engineering. And traffic calming is a partnership between Chief Manzik and myself. Both of our teams work on this. This is one of our most popular requests citywide. But we have sort of two main strategies right now we're implementing to look to bring the backlog down. One being, as the director noted, this transition more towards a broader traffic kit of traffic calming tools and using a more holistic approach to the block rather than prescriptively speed humps. And we will be putting out a new traffic calming protocol in line with our new 311 traffic calming update, which we're looking to put out in the fall, describing a little bit more to the public which items are applicable where. And then the other strategy we have is investing more of our capital budget in our neighborhood traffic calming initiative. And this identifies neighborhoods with significant equity and safety needs and implements a holistic traffic calming approach neighborhood-wide. So combining that proactive approach in will allow us to prioritize neighborhoods with the greatest need and more efficiently deploy traffic calming area-wide as well.
Thank you for that answer. And I think it's very important for the traffic calming that we really have an emphasis on getting the word out to our neighbors. I think often when people think of traffic study or traffic calming, it's either speed bump or speed camera. And those are the two solutions that they want to find. And I think it will be very important for DOT in the next coming years to also not only tell people of the other traffic calming mechanisms that we have that we can perform, but also tell those stories as well. I think a lot of the times we're not telling the story of I don't want to say that the nasty word, but bike lanes or just or any other. Or just any other traffic calming bump outs. There is a bump out right outside of Mary E. Rodman, and I had folks immediately call me and complain about it. But we haven't had too many accidents since then. And so it works, and people get used to it. It's hard, but I just want to make sure that you guys know, at least in the 8th District, that you guys are going to have some support and someone that's going to be standing with you when it comes to making sure that we teach people about alternative traffic calming measures outside of the speed humps and speed cameras. So I just want to say that you have a partner with that, and thank you for that answer.
Right. We appreciate that. And if I might just quickly add, something that we are actively working on is trying to get together some demonstration, I would say, information for our website that actually outlines what it will look like to tell you what traffic calming looks like, and that it's not exclusive to speed humps or exclusive to red light cameras, speed cameras, even just bump outs or flex posts or even bike lanes, but to show, as Clea noted, the full kit of things that outlines it. We are actively also looking at some of the best practices of other cities that do a really nice job of explaining what traffic calming does and doesn't look like, and how they are outfitting their cities with some great traffic calming devices.
Thank you for that. And I will save my other questions to the next round. Next, we have VP Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Macbeth, I first want to just express my gratitude for your swift involvement and leadership in our transportation department. Your commitment in enhancing Baltimore's transportation infrastructure is truly commendable. As we delve into the budget for FY2026, I am eager to understand how we can work together to tackle some of the pressing issues our aging city faces. And since we're talking about, I guess, traffic calming, and I want to delve right into, I guess, capital projects, and particularly since the president had mentioned in part of his opening how we struggle with people that are coming in and out of our city in major intersections. Some of them off the top of my head, Falls and Northern Parkway, Charles and West Cold Spring Lane, Liberty Heights. A lot of these intersections are shared by 4 or 5 council members, and we have problems all up and down those corridors. And as I'm still learning about the transportation, the different segments and offices within the Department of Transportation, it's, I'm understanding how it's important for us as council members to understand processes and how to share that with our constituency, because when they give us a call, they want something handled and want it done fast, even if it is an emergency situation. And you and I have talked about one of the emergency situations that have really become an emergency, where the community, you know, it needs a traffic signal there. There is an accident, and I'm sure there's other places around the city like this. There's an accident that happens almost every week. And one that really stretched far was, you know, this was 2 young people from one family that was on the sidewalk and was hit by a bus, and one of the students was in the hospital for a year. And after that accident, the community started putting tires up and, just trying to calm that one little intersection, and it's the way it's curved and everything, and it's right off of Liberty Heights. And talking to you right away, thank you so much for, that communication is so important and helping me to understand just the process, because there's nothing there. And we know that from talking with you, we have to build infrastructure and connect, and your office doesn't do that. And you contract out to get someone to do that kind of work, but the timing is so off when we have emergencies like this. So all that to say, I'd like you to speak on, and maybe share some of, after our conversation, some of the things that you are going to propose to do because it's an emergency. And in the meantime, as we're going to get that traffic signal there, because it's come to a point, every time it's an accident, the community will post this publicly and in plea of this problem happening. And we even had the Baltimore Police Department also say how this situation right here is just such a dire need. So in response, I just like your response to that on how we have, because of our communication, which is important, through emails and talking in person on Zoom, and how we've come up with a solution, because I was in belief, just like my constituency. Go to that intersection and put up a traffic light, and we know that realistically, it doesn't happen overnight. So just kind of go through that scenario so we all can understand and continue to work with you as we improve the infrastructure in our city.
Absolutely, and thank you for the question. And so definitely understand the intersection you're talking about. You're talking about an area on Liberty Heights, right near Calvin Rodwell Elementary School, and I'm a neighbor to that area. I live about, at best, maybe 5 minutes from that school and the grocery store, which I frequent. And my daughter hits that grocery store for me when I don't feel like going. So I worry about her driving down that street just because I know how fast people drive. That being said, some of the challenges we've had is that we know that you have requested a traffic signal for that particular intersection. And I think oftentimes people think that we would love it that when we ask for something, we can just plop it in the ground and it happens immediately. Some of the challenges are that doesn't happen. And obviously it's funding based. It's also then it's approval based on design. It's about creating the design. And then subsequently it's about having approval for the design. The design doesn't just come at the city level, it then comes at the state highway level because of the type of infrastructure it is. If we've gotten funding from the federal government, then the Federal Highway Administration also has to approve said design because the funding is from them. That alone, between approval of the design and even just getting approval on a grant agreement, it could take anywhere between 6 to 9 months. That is just approval of the grant. And then if we get the design submitted, state highway is one way, and that could take perhaps anywhere between 3 to 6 months, best case scenario, and then submitting it to the Federal Highway Administration, that could take another 3 to 6 months, depending on where we fall in the queue. So that's already a year and maybe a half. So this particular intersection, we do have funding to put in a light. In the interim, though, we are going to put in a speed camera since it's adjacent to an elementary school, and that will go in the 4200 block of Liberty Heights. And so I spoke with our director for ATVS, Philip Mellerson, who is here. So Philip, I'm not sure where you are, so you can raise your hand. He has worked very hard to get his team to get out there and have this speed camera put in there. We have been contacted, I believe, in the last month about 5 very severe accidents that have happened almost directly in front of the school, anywhere between 2 to 4 cars each time, airbags deployed, cars destroyed, and people severely hurt. So the camera will be relocated to the 4200 block of Liberty Heights. It will be installed by Friday. It will be speed calibrated by Sunday and operational by Monday. Subsequently, I will note that speed cameras don't always intercede and stop everything. We are not able to enforce the roads as far as the police are. So I would also encourage that we request that the police are able to go out into that particular intersection or that roadway if you have or if you have not. I would make the recommendation that you do make that request, that if they are out into that intersection, that they, visit or stay towards that intersection a little more frequently due to the level of accidents that are happening there, and if they are in fact based on speed or people also blowing through the red light. Separately, I will turn over to Clea a little bit to just talk about the grants for that particular streetlight.
Hello all, Clea Baumhofer again. So BC DOT pursued and secured a grant for the full construction funding, with local match for the new traffic signal at this intersection to assist with the critical safety need after performing our study that the signal was absolutely warranted. And at this time, we're working with SHA to execute a memorandum of understanding and understanding the sense of urgency here. We are going to expedite this location as much as possible by kicking off our design even in advance of that MOU being finalized, but still recognizing we have the full slate of approvals to go through. So we are currently anticipating construction to kick off most likely late 2026.
Thank you for that scenario of at least some of the process. And so the second question attached to that, is there state legislation that we can put in to expedite some of the processes, or, your thoughts on how we can leverage our state delegation on, as we move forward with all traffic calming, not just this particular situation that we're going through?
So essentially, this is based off of federal regulations as far as like installation of streetlights and things like that. As it relates to traffic calming, again, you're doing reviews based on regulations. So it's not so much as the ability to expedite the timing. I think really what would expedite the timing is the critical need for staff. The more people we have honestly working with us, the more we're able to address and get to the needs of the existing backlog and the incoming requests. But the nuance that's associated with getting to traffic calming, it's based on federal guidelines.
Okay. So everything reverts back to staff. And it sounds like some outreach needs to happen at some of these high schools for certain jobs. Or what's the experience? Is that part of the problem? Just people aren't interested in these kind of jobs anymore.
I would say it's multi-tiered. I wouldn't necessarily say people are not interested in the jobs. I would say that we do not have the pins for some of the jobs. And I would say we are actively recruiting for some of the jobs. So it's a matter of getting people on board and applying for the jobs. It's about finding qualified candidates. It's about being able to pay competitive wages to said qualified candidates, and, you know, finding people that would be interested in working in city government. So it's kind of a conglomeration of things.
Thank you for that. I'll stop there, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up, sorry for my question, I would like to, I'm going to have a committee request, and this is for the traffic calming studies. I would like to see broken down by district how many traffic calming requests, implementation of studies, and findings. And by that, I mean requested, warranted traffic calming, and how many traffic calming measures were completely installed. And for that one, again, broken down by district.
So I just want to add a little bit of context here. So at the request of Councilmember Dorsey, this is a multi-year request that he's had around us creating a public-facing traffic calming dashboard. We have a draft of that traffic calming dashboard that we've shared with the council member. It is in the early stages, so it's phase 1, where we've taken all the requests that came in through 311. There were requests that came in through other avenues, as well as some of the school requests. And then what we are going through is we're linking it back to the status, and we're updating the status of each of those requests. But you would be able to filter by district, what are the outstanding traffic calming requests, and then the phase that we're in now is being able to determine and identify exactly where they are in the process. Right now, it'll say it's in progress or, you know, undergoing an assessment. So we're finalizing and cleaning up that data, but that I think will answer your request. Subsequently, the thing that the council member asked us to do as well is he wanted to be sure that the public could understand the traffic calming process, right? And so we are outlining the traffic calming process and making sure that the process that we have outlined for the public is the process that is occurring inside of our city systems. And so as many of you all know, we're operating with two systems here, right? There's the city work systems where the work request goes into that system, and then obviously there's the Salesforce 311 system as well. And so we're making sure that the processes that are in those systems are the same as the process that we're sharing with the public. And then the final thing that we're doing, and I actually had OPI to do this a while ago, probably over a year ago in DOT stat, we mapped the traffic calming process. And because I wanted to see if there were opportunities for us to streamline that process. As you know, there's the public engagement portion of it, which the director and team can let us know, but I believe that is one of the longest phases of it. And so we were trying to look to see if there are opportunities for us to streamline and be more efficient in that process. But a thing that we've discovered more recently is that there's even an opportunity for us to streamline the work order process as well. I say all that to say for you all that traffic calming is a priority. And again, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge all of you all, because you all have brought this request to me, but the council member has been asking me for this for some time now, and I feel good about where we're going and that it will meet the needs of this council and your request.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. When do you think that the dashboard will be completed?
So what we can offer to you is a briefing of the current status of the dashboard. So we have all of the majority of the request, I would say, and the team, please weigh in if I'm misspeaking. What we're going through now is cleaning the data on the status of each of those requests, because we want to make sure that that information is accurate before it goes out to the public. So we'll be going through that process, I would say, over the summer to make sure that it's ready to go for the public. And then a thing we haven't talked about is the public-facing 311 site that we're building, where we have the ability to do this internally, where externally we're going to allow for residents to like search and see all the 311s in their neighborhoods and the status of those 311s. Traffic calming would actually be a part of that as well, but we have built a separate database for traffic calming.
Music to my ears. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's chat a little bit about special events. When I look at the at the performance measures there, the only two listed, at least that are shared in this, and I know you all track much more, are the number of events served with setup and breakdown of booths, which is great, and then the percent of large special events applications entered in the system within 7 days. I think what I certainly know for our office in the first district, but I think probably for some of my colleagues too, we regularly get, whether it's big parades covering a big footprint with thousands of people participating, or whether it's a community block party with one block. Oftentimes, people will apply for permits well in advance, and then about 4 weeks out, will start stressing and pulling their hair out and get in touch with us, and then we get in touch with special events, and we run through it, and then, days ahead of time, they get their permits, they take a big, deep breath, they treat us like we're heroes that we saved their event, and that's all very gratifying, I suppose, but it feels like a lot more stress than there ought to be for something that's just a normal part of business in the city. I know I'd be interested, whether it's something to track already or it's something to track in the future, and I think it's critical enough that I'd love to see it here in the future, but you all, I don't know how that works, but I'll say it anyway, would be to say, I think how many special events permits are fully processed and completed before 4 weeks prior to the event date, right? So like 28 days before XYZ event, how many of the permits are fully processed and in the hands of the event organizers? Do you have any data like that already, or is that something you could commit to providing for us as a performance? Does it seem like a good performance measure that you could track and report to us?
Good afternoon. My name is Adam Cloud. I'm the Chief of Right of Way. In answering your question, that is data we can pull, but the causes are multi things that kind of feed into that. So in approving special events, we coordinate with many different approvers and subject matter experts across both DOT and other city agencies. Once someone submits an application, doesn't mean that it has all the required documentation and clarity that's needed to kind of do that evaluation. So it is something that we could provide, but there are many different inputs that kind of feed into when that permit is in hand of the organizer.
No, I appreciate that. And I suppose by asking for the percent that are completed before 4 weeks prior, I am assuming, in fact, that the processes of seeking more information, seeking clarity, and coordinating with other agencies are involved, which I know is not completely under your control, would also be shifted back to be able to reach a goal. I suppose another way to ask that question would be to say, what is the internal goal or expectation for how soon before an event you expect the current process to resolve so that people have what they need in a timely fashion? What's the goal?
So in answering that question, for a special event, the minimum amount of time that we require for review is 6 weeks out to the event. I would say ideally we would like to have it within their hands within kind of 4 weeks of their event, but we encourage everyone to kind of apply as early as possible to kind of have that in hands in the eyes of the reviewers as soon as possible.
Great. I think the other data point that might be helpful then too is because oftentimes I've heard that people apply early because, this is a big, you all are having lots of events. For some organizations, this is their one big event a year or one of two big events, and so they apply 6 months out, things like that. But then they don't hear, the process doesn't get initiated, right? They may not get a contact, or at least not a substantive contact for a very long time. Do you all track or have an expectation for how, even if it's just like hey, receive the application, you'll hear from us soon. What's the internal expectation, the process for somebody to hear back and just, know the process has started?
So this is something that actually has been helped extraordinarily by the launch of our new public portal for our OpenGov system. So once someone submits their application, they receive a confirmation that it was submitted, and they are really able to see as it goes through the process. When someone takes a look at it, when it moves on to reviewers, we're also able to have communication through the portal. If there are any questions, they can really interact with staff and reviewers through the portal. So we have seen some benefit with that in terms of transparency. That was one of the things the director kind of mentioned.
Cool. Thank you for that. My second question has to do, in particular, it's related to the capital budget. I know we've had some conversation on this already, but one of the big projects on our side of town, certainly impacting the 13th and the 1st, and maybe even another district all up in the north end, is the Washington Street project, the traffic calming and two-way protected bike lane there. I know capital-wise, there's $4.6 million allocated in capital budget. I know right now we're pushing hard for 100% design, and then there's the final public engagement period and implementation. Does that $4.6 million get us all the way through to the end of the project, or is there a second capital allocation and further work done in the next fiscal year after FY2026?
I'm going to have Sean talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Director.
Good afternoon. Sean Burnett, Capital Planning Chief, Baltimore City DOT. For the Washington Street project, our new estimates came in pretty high. This is becoming a regular occurrence with a lot of our estimates. We have currently requested the remaining balance in grants. We've applied for a grant to try and cover that gap. We won't know until we've received news whether or not we can close that gap utilizing the grants. We may need to utilize another strategy, but I can get back to you, and of course, as soon as we know exactly what that looks like.
And the construction stage wouldn't begin until you had all money in hand?
Correct.
Okay. What's the size of that gap that do you anticipate?
It came in about 6 million higher.
6 million above would have been, but
Correct.
okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, or Mr. Chair. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Councilman Torrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues. Director Macbeth, has been refreshing to work with you the last couple of months. I'm a firm believer in government efficiency and accountability. I believe that you have added a level of accountability that the agency needs. However, I'm still struggling with the department, your actual division of planning. For the record, to my neighbors in West Baltimore who received inadequate notice about the Greenway Trail Network, to my neighbors who received inadequate notice in asking for any support letters for the Utah Police bike lane, it is unacceptable for the division to actually engage with residents that way. Members of this committee have been inundated with conversations from residents in West Baltimore who do not feel engaged. And directly in my office right now, I have my staff pull emails. We have about 8 instances in which the leadership in that division failed to notify not only my office, my staff, but Black-led community organizations, to the point where letters of intent as well as support were asked of white-led organizations in West Baltimore. Not only is it insulting, but it shows not only, as I will say, implicit bias. To the Black and brown neighbors who sustain this tax base, we deserve to be acknowledged and not be afterthoughts. With that being said, Director, what training or controls will be in place to inform my neighbors, my office, and fellow council members of projects moving forward?
Thank you for your question, Councilman Torrance. So again, we spoke about this, but I will publicly say I absolutely apologize for the, I won't even say miscommunication, for the communication that was happening without your knowledge. What training is going in place is that we are still currently using our council protocol, which is council engagement, where we are actively utilizing our government relations team, which is Luciano Diaz, who is sitting behind me, as well as Christian McNeil, who is also here, to reach out to council, as well as the community liaisons that are actively assigned to the various council members. They are to be the primary point of contact. I did send letters to each council office that was to notify that that is the best way for our people to reach you and for you all to reach us. Additionally, noting that you all have my personal cell phone as well as my work cell phone. And so for the information that had been misconstrued, that did not happen, again, I apologize. The training that is equally happening inside is that we are making sure that we are in fact absolutely absolutely utilizing the policies that we have asked you to utilize. There's no way that we should be asking you to do something that we are in fact not doing ourselves. As far as implicit bias, as somebody who is trained in equitable work in environmental justice and those issues, professionally, that hurts my heart, and personally, that hurts my heart to even hear that that is something that could have or would have happened here. And I can assure you that it's not something that was an intention or is something that would absolutely ever happen here or happen again or move forward within our agency. We are an agency that looks to serve equitably in our communities in Baltimore City and will continue to do so. And anything that we can do and continue to do moving forward to make sure that that is seen by your office and any other council member, we are absolutely apt to do so, sir.
Thank you, Madam Director. Can I have a commitment to inform the community associations, which are 5 in Reservoir Hill, Madison Park, Marble Hill, Druid Heights, who were also impacted by this project, who were not informed as well or engaged? I say that wholeheartedly because as a person who believes firmly in ethics, I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. My fraternity has opposition to this bike lane project, and I recused myself from the project to ensure that there was adequate and equitable actual engagement from my community. If I'm leading with my own integrity, I expect our employees to do as well. And I say that because it brings a cloud of doubt from my neighbors who are not engaged about the intent of the project and their voices being heard, especially when we think about the Masons, we think about ESTEP, which is a historically Black funeral home in West Baltimore, who's been there historically on that neighborhood. We think about the impact in terms of the Carroll Museum, which is on Utah Place as well. I think about the people who are not heard in this process. I think about the appearance of impropriety as well. And I think that moving forward, I would like to make sure that all those organizations are engaged and that it's not only just white-led organizations that were informed about this project and asked for letters of intent. I just want to say that again, not just white-led organizations receiving offers to provide letters of support for this project.
Absolutely, and I will provide my assurance and commitment that one, we will reach out to each organization directly and provide opportunities to sit with them and talk to them about the project. And again, absolutely willing and to sit down and talk to you about this project in person and making sure that we address any additional concerns, future and or present.
Councilmember, can you repeat the ask? We just were trying to make sure we captured it.
I just want to make sure that Druid Heights, Marble Hill, going down the map, Madison Park Improvement, and all 5 community associations within Reservoir Hill were informed as well because this impacts my neighbors there as well. I say that because there were 3 organizations engaged according to your internal memo. So I just want to make sure that everyone is at the table and no one is left out. In fact, I would even go a step further. We should inform the residents at McCullough Homes or HABC properties as well, because they will be impacted by this. If we want to talk about equity in terms of who would more than likely access the bike lane or use it for multimodal uses. With that being said, as we're finishing Druid Hill Park, I would like a status update in terms of the federal grant that we received, $6 million for Druid Park Lake Drive, and where we are in terms of how we move that project forward. As we're approaching the Druid Hill Visioning Plan, we know that we more than likely in the next 4 years will be out of Druid Hill Park, and then the roadway around my historically Black communities want to be connected back into the park as an equity policy, and I just want to make sure that we are on time with that.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Stu Sirota, Deputy Director of Planning and Sustainable Transportation. We are in the final stages with the State Highway Administration with getting our RFP finalized, so that we're hoping to advertise that RFP in the second half of this calendar year. We anticipate that it will be a project of about 24 months, and we are hoping to advertise within the next 2 to 3 months based on what we've what we're hearing now.
As a committee request, I would like the engagement plan for all the communities surrounding Druid Park Lake Drive. That includes the communities who have access, including on the 14th district side, as well as the 6th district side with Park Circle. That means members of Woodbury, Wyman Park, and then all the communities that surround the park within the 7th district as well, including the neighbors on Gwynns Falls Parkway. And I would like that by July 1st. Yes, and my fellow council members as well.
Absolutely.
We'll get that to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Porter?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Director, I want to transition a little bit to highway user revenue fees. We know that there was an increase in statewide highway user revenue fees for the city of Baltimore. Can you share how you all are prioritizing those funds across maintenance, safety improvements, and transportation projects across the city?
Yes, I will jump into that a little bit, and I'm also going to ask my colleague from Government Relations to also talk a little bit about it. So our highway user revenue fees were, I guess, maintained, if you will, at about 12% for the next fiscal year. Notably, I will say, way back at when, in my time with the city before, our highway user revenue fees were at close to 15%. At the current level we're acting at, we are utilizing the funds for resurfacing projects, other, I would say, midterm to long-term maintenance projects within the city. It is, I would say, essentially helping us maintain our project work within the city, contributing to funding that weighs into projects that we are essentially saving for as we move into larger formula-based projects that we save over each fiscal year to subsequently, after, say, maybe 4 to 5 fiscal years, we have enough money to move forward with the next stage of a project. But then oftentimes that leaves us with a deficit, because by the time we get to that year, the project costs have gone up. So the highway user revenue fees are absolutely helpful. Are they enough? No. Luciano, may I defer to you to give a little more context?
And before you transition, yeah, no worries, man. Before you transition, you actually hit the nail right on the head of where I wanted to kind of really understand. We have urgent needs within the city, and so if you can, before we transition to your government affairs person, how are you all assessing urgent needs versus kind of the long-term sustainable needs that you need for these projects?
Taking a look at our urgent needs, one of the transitional things that I've tried to have us do is to be a bit more proactive instead of reactive. Coming to the agency, I felt that we had a very reactive stance within how we operated. I think when people called, we jumped. Which is fine in part sometimes, but oftentimes I think it's better if you are proactively looking at the things ahead of you and seeing that if you are driving in a certain area and you notice that this area is critically in need, and you know that this particular area is oftentimes a problem, and you're always hearing about this area, if you are being proactive about making adjustments and fixing things in this particular area, then you're not having to jump every time someone is calling you to say, like, hey, we're getting a call about this. So those are some of the ways that we're taking a look at addressing issues. More specifically, I'll give you an example. For the footprint of City Hall area, we were able to install, I would say, almost 6 ADA curb ramps in about a 6-week period. So I think it's one of those factors. When people say things can't be done, I think it's about in what capacity can they not be done. I think it's about when there is a will, there's a way. We knew we had the money to do the work. It was just about mobilizing and doing the work. And to go to what something Council President Cohen noted is that you'd like to see more work done in-house. Almost all of that work exclusively was done in-house. And so, and they did a phenomenal job. Something to note also, It goes without saying, Councilman Dorsey pointed out something that we are actively taking a look at, which were the design of how the curb ramps are going in. And so there were lessons learned, right? There were things that we were working on, things that we're fixing. So I just want to note that we were proactive in our stance of doing things. Did we do everything perfect? No, but did we get a lot of really good work done? Were we able to provide a really good footprint area to where each of you come to work every single day? And I would argue to say that it doesn't look a lot better for when you walk into your offices, and is it a lot safer when I walk into my office and all the other people that work down in this particular corridor have a safe place to walk into? So these are some of the things that we have been able to use HUR funding for to actively work on and do in a critically short period of time.
Yep. So before we get to Luciano, I just wanted to offer a little bit more around HUR funding. So with the increased HUR, and this is under the director's leadership and of course the mayor's direction, we're able to double the amount of lane miles that we're going to be able to resurface this paving year, because it is an absolute priority for us to ensure that our residents are on safe roadways. And so that was directly because of Director Macbeth and her leadership and thoughtfulness around leveraging HUR. The other important context around HUR, given that we're in this kind of limited time period where we have the additional funding, we are able to use HUR to leverage against other like state and federal dollars, for example. So HUR can be used as a match for other projects that for other projects that we're undertaking. So when we were actively pursuing some of the IIJA funding from the federal government, we were looking at our HUR dollars to help us to provide matching dollars on some of those projects. So although we can talk about the dollars itself, but it's the leverage that those dollars allow us to use against whenever we need to match other funds. And I think this year DOT's capital budget is what, 180 or so million. A significant portion of that, the majority of that, is going to be HUR funding. And so we want to maximize the time period that we're in to get as many projects as we can get done, knowing the significant backlog, which the director, deferred maintenance, which the director talked about in her opening remarks. It's critical. We haven't even started talking about bridges in the city and where we are when it comes to our bridges. I had the team do a study. I'm sure we're going to get to traffic signals. It'll cost us about anywhere between $500 to $800 million to replace our signals that are more than 30 years old, right? We have some significant issues in front of us, and we have limited dollars that we need to maximize. But in the CIP, you will see all of the projects in this year's CIP, and the majority of those projects have some sort of HUR funding as a part of it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Luciano Diaz, Deputy Chief for Government Affairs. My thunder has been stolen somewhat. Most of my points have been hit on. But I guess a good way of looking at HUR is we have a small window of opportunity to address billions of dollars of a maintenance backlog. And historically, our HUR has mostly been operational. BCDOT is very dependent on HUR for its operational dollars. So what we're seeing now is that after a decade of capital funds in the tens of millions, really low tens of millions. In FY24, we got 34 million. FY25, we had over 66 million. And now we're going to have, as the CA said, over $100 million for capital funding. So we're actually seeing, as a result of this legislative change from a few years ago, we're finally getting that sizable increase to our capital program.
Thank you so much, Luciano. Mr. Chair, I would like to make an official committee request. If we can have a by-district breakdown of how many or how much HUR funds are going to each district for various projects, that can be something by the end of the summer. I don't need it very quickly. That's just for our tracking purposes within our respective council districts.
Does everyone have that?
And Councilman Porter, I think one thing to note, so $94 million of the HUR allocation is going to capital, which we can allocate out by council district very easily. And we should be able to work with our colleagues in planning to get that for you much earlier than the end of summer.
Yeah, that's fine.
The
$6 million could be, because you said 100, you said 140 or 100?
it's 94.1 million of the allocation is going to capital.
But what's the total amount?
Out of the total HUR amount in the 26 budget is 271.9 million.
Great, so we can see the breakdown of the remaining.
So the remainder of that is supporting DOT's operations. And so we're not able to break that out by council district just
interesting.
because, that covers everything from street management costs to traffic management. And that is less clear cut in terms
Sure.
of being able to point to how
Put it by
those dollars
district.
are being deployed in the city.
Yeah, so I can compromise the 94.1 million, if we can see that by district. When it comes to the additional remaining operational funds, I would love to see in next year's budget, when we're talking about DOT budget, that money being allocated or some sort of signal that HUR funds are used for these particular positions.
And that information lives in the executive summary
Perfect.
document
Okay.
in the revenue section. There is a summary of all of the operating services
Sure.
that the HUR is being allocated to on page 39 of the
Sure.
executive summary.
Sure, and I'm aware of that summary. What I would like to do is go a little deeper, because throughout these budget hearings, we've been talking about vacancies, we've been talking about additional pens. I have my own assumptions, but I would love to see it in black and white with regard to the positions that we are funding for those operational costs for DOT.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. My next question actually has to deal with speed cameras. So we've been seeing an uptick of speed cameras in many of the neighborhoods, and there's conversation that these speed cameras are only happening particularly in Black neighborhoods. When we talk about performance metrics, do we have any type of crash reduction rates or speeding violations that demonstrates the effectiveness of these respective speed cameras in their neighborhoods?
We do. I'm going to ask Philip Mellerson, our ATVS director, to come forward and talk a little bit more about this.
Perfect. And also, sir, if you can go through the criteria and the approach of process of how you determine those particular locations for these speed cameras.
Good afternoon, Philip Mellerson, Photo Enforcement Director. As far as, I can answer your second question, as far as the process of the warranting of photo enforcement at any location, the process is they come by constituent and councilman request. You file a 311, and then we complete the evaluation in-house. As far as speed validations, video validations, we get speed test cameras out there, and then we go through the crash data as well as all the analysis. And then we try to get the camera or speed camera, truck overhead camera, or red light camera out there within 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks for speed cameras, and 6 to 9 months for red light cameras.
Okay. And the second question?
And your other question, I'm sorry.
Yes, so the other question had to do with crash reduction rates, how you all are evaluating crash reduction rates and speeding violations in the location of those speed cameras.
Yes,
So for-
absolutely.
Yeah.
We actually have seen a reduction of about 33% of all photo enforcement locations throughout all the districts.
You sure about that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, sorry, I'm joking. I'm just trying to lighten up the mood. So with regard to the 33%, is that, you said that's citywide. I would love to see that breakdown by district.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, cool. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Ramos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director, and your team. We had a very successful town hall in my district with DOT. Got lots of great positive feedback. There were almost 100 people there from all across my district. It was really great, and so I really appreciate it. And of course, all this time that I think out of those 2,300 requests for traffic calming, I really do believe that half of them are probably in my district. It's one of the biggest issues in my district. So I want to talk first about, then I also want to just recommit around the highway user revenues. I was part of the team that went to the General Assembly with the mayor's office and with the Maryland Association of Counties to advocate for more dollars for HUR. And that's a really big deal. And I just want to make sure everybody knows and the committee knows that, you know, our other counterparts, and the vice president would verify this as well, you know, our counterparts in other parts of the state did get additional HUR, but they really went to bat for us too. And so I know that we're thinking about a similar type of advocacy to keep that HUR level up because as the director said, it's really critical for all the needs that we have in our city. So I'm looking forward to that fight and trying to get all the information that we need because one of the things we can show from the last 3 years and now 4 years of having additional HUR is that we used that money. We used it well and we did a lot with it and we were able to address a lot of critical needs but also help a lot of residents in the neighborhood. So I'm looking forward to that. So my questions, I wanted to talk first about the ADA work that's being done and just ask about as I understand it, the ADA work that's being done is ramps across the city, but also just trying to kind of get through the backlog of the sidewalks that might be damaged for various reasons. And wanted to just report that, and see if you're planning on changing this at all, but the way that the ramps are working, sometimes our stroller pusher friends and families are ending up having to push the stroller into the road and then go onto the crosswalk because the fan is put in the wrong place. I'm calling it a fan. It's probably some fancy technical name that I don't even know, but you know, it's not in the right place. So are you thinking about as we move forward, because we're going to have to do the entire city in terms of the ramps, thinking about, or even the people who are, you know, on a wheelchair have to go in the road first before going onto the, you know, crossing the street because of the way that the ADA ramp is shaped. So can we talk a little bit about how that's going to change or if there's like a reason for that? Because it would be great to figure that out if there's a cost issue. I know that we're trying to get an accelerated schedule to get the ramps, but if we can figure that part out.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So just for a bit of clarity, so those standards, by technicality, they're still good standards, and I can explain why that they appear the way they do. Oftentimes, when you see the way that a curb cut is, or a curb ramp, excuse me, is done that way, is because of the, I guess, smallness, if you will, of where the curb ramp is. And so that the two curb ramps are used to fill the space of where they're going into the street. Moving forward, we are looking forward to use PROAG, which is the public right-of-way accessibility guidelines. So this is recently updated in the last administration. So it was, the guidelines were approved like right at the end of the Biden-Harris administration. It was one of the last things I actually got to work on and help move through. So excited to be able to move forward with that. So utilizing PROAG, we will be making sure that we are using curb ramps that are more in alignment with the street, so with the crosswalk, so there won't be that diagonal curb ramp that you are seeing now. So we will be making those adjustments moving forward. That being said, we do still have some plans that are programmed that will have diagonal crosswalks. So, but moving forward, as we begin to have plans that are being designed, we are going to be able to incorporate PROAG. So,
great.
Yeah.
So that will be the next phase as we see, because you've already got some in the pipeline, but then the
things
next
that
phase.
have been programmed for years or plans that have been completely designed that would obviously set back or change plans or cost to change. But otherwise, my intention during my tenure here is to incorporate PROAG as part of our guidelines.
It sounds like it's PROAG is more than just the ADA. There's a whole
there's a whole host of guidelines that are associated with it.
Great. My next question has to do with right-of-way. and particularly around right-of-way permitting. And permitting relative to the street cuts and sidewalks. We have had a number of, and you and I have had this discussion, around our friends at BGE tearing up our roads and not doing a very good job of putting them back. But also, I have run into this issue of the permits for just, as we're rehabbing our houses, as we're, doing, if people need a replaced water line or whatever, that they're getting the street cuts permits, and we have had a challenge with some of the companies that people are working with. And so I guess my question is around the upgrades to the permit process, first of all, because, it's, you have to go down and pay and, all of that. But also just monitoring. I mean, I honestly, what has happened here is that these two companies have really taken advantage of our constituents by putting the permit in the constituent's name. And so then when they don't do the job right, when the company doesn't do the job right, the constituent gets fined. Then the company will go back to the constituent and say, yeah, well, I'll fix this. And so it adds more cost to the constituent. And so I know the law department was thinking about having some sort of affidavit but I think we need to really think through when we think about right-of-way permitting, especially in the light of Be More Fast and some of the other things, that whole thing has to be redone. Because our constituents who, don't know what they're signing because they're not technical, engineers. I certainly am not. But I have 3 constituents that I know of that have gotten through this. I think it's numerous others. And it's 2 companies in particular that are taking advantage of our residents. And so I want to just know a little bit more about how you're envisioning the right-of-way process, permit process, to actually be changed to avoid this kind of situation, but also to have additional monitoring relative to inspections, especially with, the bigger guys that we talk about all the time. This is a big deal. It's taking advantage of our residents.
So I'll jump into this a little bit, and then I'll also have Adam talk about it a bit. I know I've talked to you several times about permitting issues, and then constituents absorbing significant fines because the companies have put the permits in their name. I think what we definitely have to do is take a look at how the process is going and making sure that these companies are held accountable for how the process is going. And I think that definitely falls on us in making sure that we are reviewing the permit packages that are coming in and ensuring that the permit is in fact in the company's name that is doing the work and not in the constituent's name that is having the work done. So I would defer to Adam a bit more to talk a little bit more about what is happening over there in that regard.
Good afternoon again. So I'm very familiar with the situation that you're referencing. We have started to make some of those changes that you referenced. We have an affidavit in place now that needs to be signed by the applicant and the person that's being applied on their behalf, acknowledging what the rights and responsibilities are under the permit. And that's part of the permitting process now. Anytime someone would be filing for a permit on someone else's behalf, that would be something that will need to be signed off on by both parties. There's some additional modifications that are kind of in progress that we're going to put in place to put more teeth into that, but that is something that we definitely have our eyes on and are looking to make improvements.
Yep, I appreciate that. My understanding of the affidavit is just the customer acknowledging that the permit is going to be in their name if the contractor is filing, which I don't think is good enough. I think the permit has to be in the contractor's name, particularly depending on the degree of the project, right? I mean, a resident is not going to dig up the sidewalk. Like, that's a fact. The resident might fix a faucet, but they're not going to dig up the sidewalk. So I really think that there has to be some serious reform. There had to be reform of the permit process anyway, because you have to go down and pay as opposed to being online, and the review process takes a long time, and I believe that Be More Fast is going to take a look at this as well. That's going to be an issue.
So the affidavit that we have in place now, is a little meatier than just this person is filing on my behalf. It really does spell out code provisions that are required to be adhered to by agreeing to that. Some of the other things I kind of referenced kind of at a high level are getting things around, pushing things in the direction of having the subject matter expert kind of be that person that would always file for something for a project of that degree. We have, through the launch of this public portal, also been able to implement some of the things that you referenced. Permit payment can now be made online through the Paymentus portal and integration. So they can see when a payment is due for a permit, the applicant receives an email, and they also receive a notification through the portal. They can make their payment, and then the permit is released. So there still is a need to come and pick up the no parking signs if that's part of their process. We don't want to have something out that can be modified, but we are looking at ways to kind of automate that process as well.
Excuse my coughing. Well, thank you. I appreciate that you've been taking a look at that, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now we're going to move to Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi. You're my 4th DOT director, but you're always my #1 DOT director.
You're making me blush.
DOT resurfaces streets 2 ways, in-house and via contractor.
Correct.
This year, we are attempting to return productivity to the levels we once enjoyed, more than 4 times as much as what was done last year or the year before. I don't know, I had the numbers in front of me. Several years. It's been a while since we did anything like what we are setting our sights on this year. Streets are classified generally in 3 ways: local, collector, arterial. They're minor collector, major collector, minor, major arterial. But anything that's not classified as a local roadway, and even classified as a local roadway but has over 6,000 vehicles per day traveling on it, is subject to the standards of the Complete Streets Ordinance, meaning that they all have to be reviewed for ways that the design needs to be changed in order to improve safety for people of all ages, users of all different modes, and improve those mobility options on the streets. That ends up being 50% or more of the total. So we're talking about, 55, maybe 60 lane miles of road that we need to have reviewed and designed this year. You and I have spoken about this already. Everybody here knows I've asked about this literally every single year since I have been a member of this city council. I want to try to make a really pointed couple of requests here. First of all, the people who we would need to review and design actual changes, these are engineer 1, engineer 2 positions. Clea, you're classified as engineer 2. Is that the right classification for the kind of position that's needed in order to make these changes? Design, review, and changes?
Like in order to, yes, to both review or develop a design plan, like a striping plan in-house, it would be engineer 1 and engineer 2 positions.
Okay. And the folks in your shop under Service 683, the street management service, is the area where that would essentially be done, right? I mean, you're also the ones doing traffic calming. And it's much the same kind of thing. Design a striping plan, whether it's an intersection or a stretch of some street, as has already been discussed at some length here, the traffic calming backlog, yada, yada. Right. What is the number of positions that is necessary for engineer 1 and engineer 2, or some combination of the both, in order to be able to address the volume of traffic calming requests that come in and address the portion of resurfacing plans that we have to, that we expect to do, right? 55, 60 miles of stuff that needs to comply with the Complete Streets ordinance each year, and to have that design work done sometime before the commencement of the paving season. And for that matter, make sure that any bridge work that's being designed is being done in compliance, where we have had persistent resistance to the idea that bridges should comply with the same law that applies to all of our streets. What is the number of positions that is necessary to be able to do all of that in-house, all of those striping plans?
So because, as you noted, my team is juggling responsibilities from, citywide plan review, project management, I would say it would probably take an additional 10 to 15 engineers to be managing all of our large-scale federal aid projects, addressing these traffic calming requests more quickly, managing our signal system in a more dynamic and on-demand way, and still bringing more design work in-house.
Anything to add, Director?
I concur. I mean, I would say I would lean to the higher number of about 15. I mean, realistically, because we're addressing a backlog, a continued influx of traffic calming requests, existing plans, and I can tell you, really, frankly, I'm signing plans that have Khalil Zaid's name on it from when he was director. I got a plan. I mean, if we're talking real talk,
yeah.
This is a backlog. He was director before I was even ever at the city. So I just want to explain the realness of what backlog is. Like, we're actually executing plans and projects from that long ago. So for the level of service for us to be functional, that is absolutely right. And because Dan's services overlap with CLIA, with 311 and traffic calming, it makes that much more sense for it to be closer to 15, if that's a thing, yeah. He doesn't even have enough technicians. You heard him say that we have 9 people when we should have closer to 36. We're 4 times the amount of people short to absolutely even support the streetlight or the traffic signals within the city. And that's apportionment to traffic calming, just making sure the lights and pedestrian signals work.
I just appreciate the clarity on this, because this is not something that I've received from directors 2, 3, and 4, because you are always number 1 in my book. I have been asking for this for as long as I have been on the council, because every member of this council understands the basic math of hiring consultants to do the same work as in-house personnel for a higher rate of cost to us, the taxpayers, for the same output. But what also takes a little deeper dive to really grasp is this issue of the cycle of capital improvement approvals, where we go, so what's the plan for this year? Well, we don't know, because we can't even decide on what streets we're going to resurface until the capital budget is already approved, because it's in the capital budget that we then draw funds in order to even think about, to even pay ourselves to think about what streets we might consider resurfacing this year, when half the paving season is already gone by the time that's approved. And so there's no world in which that can translate to work being done this year. And that's just a completely dysfunctional timeline for execution and like having a clear routine of what's getting done. And it means that we're getting less for our capital dollars when the money that we should be using for the hard construction, the capital portion, is being drawn away in order to pay a consultant just to do the thinking and design work instead of having that done in-house and say, pull the list off the shelf. What designs do we have ready? This is why we have a traffic calming backlog and why we're going to spend, you know, we've got all this conversation about HUR and how it's tenuous at best. And if we don't have it next year at the volume that we have this year or the year after,
Right.
if it goes down without having made the most of it when we had it, we missed the opportunity to make our city more livable and more attractive to live in. And I'll just note that Johns Hopkins is doing outreach about recruitment for hiring for hundreds of new professional educator research positions for a new facility that they want to bring to Baltimore. And shockingly, to some, when they talk to people who they want to recruit from Harvard, from Princeton, from Yale, those people are saying, hey, Baltimore's a nice place to live. It's an interesting city. You know, it's got charm, whatever. And the cost of living isn't, you know, exorbitant by comparison to other East Coast cities. But I gotta buy a car in order to be able to live there? I'm moving from Boston, I'm moving from Philadelphia, I'm moving from New York. I gotta buy a car in order to have a decent quality of life in Baltimore City? No, that's a deal breaker. That's why I'm not bringing my like Harvard PhD, my Yale PhD, my Princeton PhD to work at Johns Hopkins, because Baltimore is not a city that I can live in unless I strap myself with a car payment. We have to do this work in-house because it is not getting done otherwise on the timeline that it needs to be done in order for us to realize our growth potential while we have it. 10 to 15, leaning towards 15. Split
Yes.
probably evenly between engineers 1 and 2?
Correct.
Okay, good. Next thing. What is the number of street cuts that are done annually in this city and how many of them are actually inspected?
I'm going to defer to Adam.
So 100% of the street cuts that are done under a permit are inspected annually. I have numbers. I'd like to ask for some time to get you numbers on. So your question is how many open cuts or how many cuts done, period?
Let me make sure I'm like cutting right to the chase in the heart of this. Inspected is not inspected and made to comply with our street cut standards. And I know that for a fact because there are lots of cuts that get made in this city and are not made to comply with our street cut standards unless I make a phone call to somebody at DOT about it.
Okay. So our inspectors do inspect 100% of the street cuts that are done under a permit. They have 120.
Does that include every kind of like blanket permit? Well, does that include emergency work?
It does include emergency work. Even if work is done under a blanket permit, the permit holder is still required to submit a street cut notification form that corresponds with that work done under the blanket. So for all work that's done under a street cut permit, so to be specific, we're talking about utility street cuts. So it has to be a street cut that's done in conjunction with some type of utility asset. For those, the street cut group inspects 100% of those. They have 120 days to do restoration unless it goes into the cold weather months, and with that, 120 days can be extended. And that 120-day clock kind of starts when the project is complete. So there are times where you would see a condition that is not in a finished state. It could be a temporary patch. Once that permanent patch is made, the street cut team goes out to that to verify that the work is closed and up to standards, and then it goes into what's called the warranty period. That permanent restoration needs to hold up for a year. Our street cuts group receives notification 30 days before that 1 year happens, and they go out and make their warranty inspection before that's closed out and accepted as a city asset.
I have a very hard time finding a place that I can report in 311 about this. I can't, if I search right-of-way permit investigation, it says use this service request to verify valid permits for dumpsters, scaffolds, newspaper boxes, or other stationary objects located on a public sidewalk, alley, or street. If I look for street cut, I don't find anything in the 311 system. I know that there are street cuts that I have reported by the only means possible to me, which is just like figure out who the right person is to contact, send an email, send a text message, make a phone call, whatever, and that like years later are still exactly like they were the first, second, and third time I brought them to anybody's attention. And so far as I know, there's not a way that I can report it in the 311 system in order to put a timestamp on the fact that I reported something to anybody at all. And so I don't know that there's a system in place for addressing that. Am I missing something?
So there, Webster, our data chief, can back me up if I get this incorrect, but we have 3 different SR tags that correlate to street cut work. One is dealing with plates. 2 actually are dealing with plates, and one is dealing with street cuts. So we have 3 SR groups that you will be able to file a 311 complaint and kind of choose that as your criteria for the SR.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Webster, Mobile DOT Data Chief. Yes, we do have 3 street cuts related SRs that you can put into the system. One is the street cuts issue. The other is the steel plate and steel plate repairs.
I see steel plate complaint. When I type steel plate into the 311 app, I see steel plate complaint. When I type street cut, there is nothing that comes up in the 311 app. I cannot report a street cut in the 311 app.
So that's something that we need to take a look at and make a modification and work with the 311 team to update our reporting methods then. So.
Cool.
Yes, it's something that I will investigate and get back to you.
When can we get this straightened out by?
The 13th.
And you said there are 3 different ways. I heard the one about steel plate, and then what's the other supposed to be?
Street cut issues and steel plate repairs. I believe it's the 3rd.
There's 2.
No,
You said there's 3.
he's saying steel plate and then steel plate repairs. So needing a steel plate, or if the steel plate is not fixed properly. So prime example, I'll use delegate.
Call me crazy, there shouldn't be 2.
No, it shouldn't be, but I'm gonna give you an example because Councilwoman Ramos and I both experienced an issue on 29th Street where there was a steel plate that became unfixed to the road, and no, not just wobbly, like you could almost see into it where BG&E was doing work, and there was a screw in the road, so like the screw came out of the plate. She experienced it because somebody called about it. I experienced it because I ran over the screw, and it happened to be the same day. And so 2 different things, not making a excuse. So something we can address by June 13th. We'll have at least had a first conversation with 311 to begin to try to rectify the adjustments that need to happen in the 311.
I know that there's
system.
a setting, like in the way that 311 is set up, where
absolutely.
there are things that maybe I could report over the phone, if I called in.
Oh, yeah.
That are not made public in the app, and I've had to ask for things to be made public in the app in the past.
And we can talk to them about fine tuning it so that when it appears on either utilizing it in the app or going on to the web to make sure that it properly appears. So give us to the 13th to have that conversation with 311. I believe her name is Jackie.
Yeah.
So talking to her.
She's good.
Huh?
I hear she's good.
I'm sorry, is this a committee request?
Sure.
Or something you're gonna work off?
Sure. I want to make sure that the service request for street cuts is made available and accessible in the 311 app. And call me crazy, I think that we should only have one service request for all things steel plate related. Steel plates are just not that big a deal that we need to have multiple. I mean, we're trying to get us down from 9 different street lighting service requests to 1. I think we can whittle down our 2 for steel plates to 1.
Gotcha.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Blanchard, and then after Councilman Blanchard, we're going to start round 2, and I'm just going to ask that all committee members, or all members here today, we just limit it to 1 question in the interest of time, and then if you have another one and we get to round 3, we'll continue on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, for clarification, is it 2 questions in this?
This is your round 1. You have 2.
Just making sure. Director, so you wrote PROAG, huh?
I was a co-author.
Oh,
I didn't do it myself.
okay. Well, either way, that's still pretty cool, and it particularly good timing for the city that, with our massive investment in ADA compliance, we have a leader in your position who knows this stuff front to back.
Yes,
So,
it was an excellent coincidence. I will say that.
yeah. Speaking of, you said that. What was your stat for curb ramps around City Hall? About how many had been improved?
I said it was close to about, I said 6 dozen. We had a funding opportunity of an infusion of funds that we were able to utilize to update around City Hall. So we took that opportunity and did that.
Okay, awesome. And I agreed, I think the point that my colleague from the 3rd District was making, that one of the points that as we do a whole bunch of these, and hopefully as we in-house this, the efficiency and the speed at which we're able to do this is going to improve greatly over the next 4 years. Going to something that's been a frustration of mine for several years, since before I came into the council, and I know DOT has started distinguishing between placemaking and traffic calming, but we've had situations where you try to do some placemaking project, or maybe you try to put a crosswalk where there isn't one or something like that. And it becomes talking as a neighborhood association or a PTO or whatever. I've seen this from a couple different organizations. And then DOT then requires the organization to then fund the ADA compliance of the curb ramps construction, which is $80,000 or whatever, right? It's exorbitant, and rarely is it feasible for the organization to go get some large state grant to do this and whatnot. And so something that I asked you the first time we met, and I've kind of asked for this repeatedly, how feasible is it that either some portion of our ADA compliant curb cuts, or we have some other way to do this, that community-led placemaking or community-led demands for traffic calming could be supported by this explosion in curb ramp construction? So that way the community group would only need to do, you're painting the bump outs or whatever, right? You're not having to spend the $80,000 because DOT is going to be able to do that.
Right. So it was not all for naught. So I've been spending a considerable amount of time trying to figure out
Sure.
the what and the how to your question.
Yeah.
So just to give you a little bit of background about the ADA compliance that we have to go to. So essentially, over the course of fiscal 26, 27, and 28, we have $12 million each year. So total of $36 million. So just taking a look at the request of you asking for approximately 20% annually, right? So that would be about $7.2 million. Well, 20% of the total is for inspection and administrative costs, which would be about $7.2 million. And so we would essentially have to take a look at that amount, and then we would have to split it over the course of 14 districts. Not something that we can't do. That number then would have to be divided 65-35, because you have to do 65% of curb ramps, and then 35% have to be sidewalk reconstructions. And this is all based on the guidelines that are associated with the consent decree.
Okay.
So we are, as you can see, we've actively been trying to do the breakdown of how we could create a policy, if you will, to allow 20% of the overall annual $12 million to actively be dedicated to all council districts, that it could be subject to community investment, whether it's the streetscaping component, and then if they're doing that, and then it goes towards a specific sidewalk area or a specific curb ramp, or if a community, or if a council person has specific areas that they're interested in, or the community has selected, or they have actively selected that have some specific issues that are especially bad. Obviously, we have a list that we select from annually and go off of for each fiscal year, and it's broken down over council district, and that's done by going over an ADA list where we've had our surveys team go out and survey the areas, but we're breaking down to try to create a policy essentially of how we can work to do that 20% breakdown of that $12 million annually over the course of 26, 27, and 28. My ADA chief is out until the beginning of July, so realistically, if you could probably give me till the beginning of August to see what it would look like to have a draft policy for you, I'd be happy to provide a shared copy to you all as to what it would look like, and see how we could move forward from there.
Director, I think that'd be wonderful. I think before I go to the committee request, I just want to clarify, 20% was like me spitballing a percentage. I am just a big fan of curb cuts in general. The National Federation of the Blind is in my district. As my council member from the 14th alluded to stroller pushers, I am a frequent stroller pusher. So I do not want to impede the process of getting a whole bunch of ADA compliant curb cuts in the city. I just also want to make sure we're empowering community groups that are trying to do good stuff in the neighborhood while we're at it. So, Mr. Chair, if I can make the committee request for I guess I would ask for, this would be a
pilot, like a pilot list or a pilot memo for, I guess that's maybe the best way I would.
Yeah,
or a draft memo or something.
Yeah, a draft plan from Department of Transportation as to how community-led efforts can be supported by our expanded ADA compliance?
Yes.
And by the beginning of August?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I was making sure that you guys.
Okay, I was going to say, if you're done.
All right, yeah, and I think this is going to be really great, and I think that this is going to be something that a lot of neighborhoods across a lot of districts are going to take advantage of. I think it's going to be a good thing for the city. So that's that. The other thing I wanted to talk about in my first round of questioning, of course, as the city administrator chided me about this morning, was parking enforcement, because I love talking about parking enforcement.
No, you
A point I made to you between Tuesday, May 12th, and Thursday, May 14th, DOT had written more fourth offense RPP violations in those 3 days than it had in the previous 7 years, which is a really impressive improvement, and I appreciate your team. And I know that's Luciano put a lot of work into that on the policy side of figuring out how to get the recurring offense efforts out. So that's great. 2 questions. One, is it, a lot of my district is stadium area. Would it be feasible for DOT to explore a repeat offender ticket for process for stadium events as well?
As far as is something comparable to the RPP process, or?
Yes, like the feasibility of executing. I know there was some work that had to go into how to actually execute the repeat offender process in the RPPs.
Right.
How challenging would it be to do the same thing for the stadium area?
I think it would be a legislative component. Luciano, I'll defer to you in confirming that. But the other component would be GIS issues, or not issues per se, but I know it would be a GIS challenge, if you will. Doesn't mean that it can't be done. I know that it would be GIS related. I think it took a little bit of time as far as calibrating the handhelds to essentially pick up the delineations as to what area is what, as far as saying that this is a stadium area, and then you're gonna have to also equally calibrate, okay, today's a game day. And so now it's a violation based on a game day and things like that. And I'm not smart enough, quite frankly, as far as IT to go much further than the statement I just made, as far as the GIS components and those calibrations. So I won't say no that couldn't happen at the GIS and IT level. As far as legislatively, I know that it would have to be legislated. I would ask Luciano to chime in a bit.
I have another legislative thing that's a little more priority. I should have been more clear. I was more interested in the operational effort involved in that than the legislative piece, which I'm more than happy to work with the mayor's office on that side. That'll make sense. And just, it's, if a ticket is $32 for a parking ticket and it's $40 to park legally during a stadium event, why would I not park illegally? What's the incentive to do that?
I totally get that. I think people do that all the time in many places, why would I pay the valet when it's cheaper to park on the street and take, the street parking ticket? I definitely think something outside of, the legislative component, we would have to talk to our IT division, and that's something we can certainly do. A mixture of is talking to our IT team, but also talking to Tyler and MOGR to see where this would set with them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the comment that is, I think, going to be more for the mayor's legislative team, but going back to license plate reader, this whole idea that we need state enabling legislation to enable our license plate readers, our illegal parking ticket license plate readers to actually work. For anyone who's not familiar, basically right now, you have to get out of the car and then go write a ticket. So it's just about as inefficient, or it's the same as walking around effectively. And so we need state enabling legislation, I think, for 2 different things. One of them is related to the Environmental Control Board, and the other one is related to being able to mail the tickets or something to that effect. And I just want to kind of emphasize that this is important, I think, from just a good sort of public space perspective, as well as like between the money we're losing by not giving parking tickets to people park illegally, and then the money we're losing because we lose compliance at the parking meters. It is an 8-digit amount of money each year that we're losing. So it's a real thing that we definitely is. It sounds mundane and maybe not the sexiest thing for a delegate to pick up and champion, but I think it is really important for us.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councilman. And we can certainly find time to discuss what that could look like in terms of being on a list of priority bills for this upcoming session.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. And then my last line on that. So parking citations since 2015, sort of hard to track. There's a lot of different.
I'm sorry. Can you?
Oh, we got to cut me off.
I'm not trying to push you, but
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. I'll just end with this comment that it appears that outside of the COVID years, year to date for this calendar year, we are below any of the other years since 2015 in parking tickets. I know the transition to the 24-hour enforcement started on March 10th, but of all the, I'm nervous that all the effort that's being put in, all the investment in new TOs, all that is, at this point, it's unclear if that's paying off, and certainly something we need to be keeping an eye on. So thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now in our second round of questions. So first, I just want to say thank you for every year, every season, the way that you guys handle the snow and ice removal throughout the city. Each year, you guys have been doing a better and better job. But I would just like some clarity, and I want to use this for the folks that are watching on TV as a source of education about the criteria needed for salt boxes. I know in our offices we get inundated every season about why isn't the salt box here? Why isn't it in my community? It's been here for years. And so the frustration reaches a boiling point right around the time it snows, and it becomes an issue for us. So I see that snow preparation has a budgeted allocation of $945,000 for fiscal year 26. Does this include the funding for salt boxes in designated areas? And my second part of the question is, if we could expand, which areas are considered eligible?
I'll start, and then I'm going to pass the mic to Damian Taylor to talk a bit more about the snow components. So the intention behind salt boxes, just a little history that I found out and did some research. Salt boxes go all the way back to the mid-1960s. The purpose behind salt boxes and the intention to be put in neighborhoods that are not primary or secondary streets, typically residential streets where plows are not able to reach. And it is for them to salt their streets, not their personal sidewalks or steps or anything like that. I think that's part of the confusion, is that people think it's the city providing salt for them to use for their personal use, in the essence of like, okay, they're giving me salt to use for my sidewalk, my steps, my walkway. But in fact, it's because the city is unlikely to be able to reach their street, or they're not on a primary or secondary street where there will be a city plow, whether the size of a pickup truck or a large plow. I live on a street that is a very small, narrow, one-lane street. We get salt boxes every year. It's a community event, good opportunity to get out and talk to my neighbors, and we salt our street together. And that is the purpose behind the salt boxes. I think oftentimes it's a miscommunication, again, an opportunity for us as DOT to provide some knowledge and community outreach and even engagement to let people know why the salt boxes are there. Probably not a popular opinion to be had once we tell people what they are actually for. But that is, in fact, the actual premise and purpose behind the salt boxes. Separately, we did note that we are actively trying to utilize the funds that we did have allocated for snow plow or snow removal purposes to brine residential neighborhoods. So although it may not necessarily happen that we would get out there to be able to salt every single neighborhood, we could get out and be able to brine ahead of the snow. And so that could be sufficient enough for these smaller streets.
Yep. No, I appreciate that, and I know you're going to defer to someone else, but I think for years they were on like every corner in every community, and people used them as such. So much so, like people they like demand it. It's like almost, I don't want to say entitlement, but I literally had someone reach out to me and say, "Hey, we need those because the guys are trying to make some money and they want to shovel, and you guys, and they need to salt down folks' walkways, and you don't have the boxes on the corner." And so when we have that level of like, this is supposed to be something that we do every year, I really think once again, like the communication and outreach portion should just in full force. Once again, telling the story, explaining it, and people are going to be upset, but the more you don't know, the more you just assume that you just took my salt box away without telling me why.
Absolutely. No, I think you're right. We talked about in our office to put together even like maybe just a small little video letting people know like the background and why and what it's meant for, and just kind of the functionality of it. It won't be popular, but it is what it is.
Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, DOT friends. I want to follow up, continue conversation on parking enforcement. I know we've had lots of conversations about it this year and even today. Just noting that in the service line, that the number of funded staff positions has been consistent, 24, 25, and looking ahead to 26, even as the overall budget has increased. It seems like the biggest chunk of the budget increase, and looking at the footnote there, is that almost $700,000 towards the LPR support, which is fine. It does say funding to continue 24-hour shifts, but I'm not sure, given that, you know, the $700,000 covers most of that jump from 15.6 to 16.2. In any event, the question is this. Do you all feel like the allocation of 16.2 million and that staffing level there in that service line is adequate for the continued expansion of proactive enforcement, this 24-hour deployment and being more proactive about things? Is that staffing level sufficient to accomplish the goals of improved performance and enforcement there?
Realistically, I'll chime in and then I will defer to Tavon, and then additionally, I'll let our HR chief also chime in if he has anything additional to say. Currently budgeted, as you mentioned, we have 141 positions, but it's not enough, folks. I mean, realistically, that's for the entire city. We mentioned the breadth and scope and the size of the city, the number of intersections that we have, the miles of local streets. We have 1,460 miles of local streets, 79,000 roadway and pedestrian lights throughout the city, and put that to 141 TOs. Now, primarily, they're tasked to manage the central business district. It doesn't mean at some point that they aren't needed elsewhere, which they are, because they're asked to come out and manage special events. Over this year alone, we have, I would say, close to 30 special events that we're tasked to. And that doesn't include, as you previously mentioned, the right-of-way areas where we get special event requests all the time, which they fall hand in hand with TOs having to be present or maintenance having to deliver equipment or whatever else, but oftentimes that includes TOs being present to manage the streets. So having 141 people present and utilized during a concert where 60,000 people are at a concert, or people are at a football game or a baseball game, and I don't know the size of the stadiums, but I imagine they're more than 10,000 people. All that being said, no, we're adequately undersourced as far as the amount of people, and for the fact that obviously there are mandatory dates that these TOs have to work, but also there's overtime, and then that falls into the repository of we have too many people doing overtime, but also this falls into the realm of we have no choice to have people do overtime. So those are some of the things I would note. Tavon, is there anything you chime in with?
Yes, Tavon Braxton, Deputy Director of Operations for DOT. Just to echo the sentiments of the director, ideally we would need more TOs to cover all the demand for the TOs. The 141 that's listed, those include administrative staff as well. So it's not just TOs actually on the street performing parking enforcement. For additional context, the 30 or so special events that she referred to, those are only the major events that kind of warrant a huge TO presence. Those are events like parades, marathons, just the huge events. But to date, we've probably serviced about 170 events thus far this season. Ideally, we would probably need twice as many TOs. And I wouldn't limit it to special events that kind of create the competing interest for parking enforcement versus like other activities. I would call it events, because for us, a signal outage is an event. Flooding becomes an event. Emergencies become an event for us. All things that kind of pull us away from doing actual parking enforcement. So, in a nutshell, I mean, we would probably need twice as many resources to cover the city adequately and meet the SLAs that, our performance metrics require.
I appreciate that. And so looking at the positions between 2025 and 26, it looks like the only significant change there was some decreases, some other positions, and 6 pins reassigned to TO1s, right? That's the change there. And that among those, whether it's 141 or whether it's the 111 who are Transportation Enforcement Officer 1s and 2s, I know we've been making progress on recruitment, things like that. What's the current vacancy rate? It's been a few months since we asked that question. I know we've made progress there.
And after this, we're going to switch over to Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon. Jamal Rain, HR Chief for Department of Transportation. Right now, we have about 9 vacancies for the TEO1. We have 7 of them going through pre-employment right now 6 that have been pre-approved by Baltimore City Police Department, which means that they have their commission. We have about 7 that are going through the commission process as we speak, because we have, in reference to the TO2s, we have 2 that are going to be promoted, which means we have additional vacancies there that will be forthcoming.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director, I could not find in the book or in the capital budget what about the sign manufacturing and signs. I have a ridiculous amount of sign requests from faded signs to taking down signs on the way on 29th Street as you go onto 83, the 2 signs that are the green ones that are missing, indicating which one is north. I can't even tell you how many people are not using Waze, so they go on the wrong lane and then they switch in the last minute. And that's been a request that we've had in for a few months. So I'm wondering where we are on sign manufacturing. Is there, additional, obviously you need additional resources for everything, but what's the sign request? I know that we've got a lot, not only in my district, but citywide. So what we should be expecting in terms of turnaround time for sign manufacturing, or is the machine still broken? Like, what's going on with the signs?
I'll start, and then I'll have Dan come up to talk a little bit more about it. So currently, there has been a backlog in signs as far as the sign making. We have been utilizing and getting prefabricated signs. Our machine has been down. We are in the process of ordering a new machine to fabricate signs. And that's kind of the extent of things as far as that goes. Dan, if you want to jump in a little bit and talk a bit more about the sign fabrications.
Dan Mantic, Chief of Traffic Operations. So one of the challenges we have is our sign shop currently is only able to make signs that are about 4 foot long. That's the limit of the equipment that we have. So the signs that you're referencing on 83 were installed by contractors and fabricated by contractors, and we don't have a contract in place to go out and reinstall signs. So it would have to go through the contract procurement methods. We are looking to upgrade some of the equipment for the sign shop that would enable them to make signs quicker. But the equipment is very expensive. I think it was the last quote we got, we're looking into was about $130,000 for the machine.
So is that in the budget for this year?
I'd have to defer.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so it is in the budget for this year that you'll be getting
Yeah.
the part to manufacture the signs?
Yeah, the challenge has been that they want us to pay for the machine upfront before delivery, so we've been having some kind of
procurement issues, you can say it.
issues, yes, before that, and that's a challenge. We rarely do that. We pay for things before we receive them. So that has been in part a challenge. One thing I did want to note is that within our priorities letter to MDOT, we did request funding to ask the Secretary's office and MDOT for funding that would allow for us to receive money to do basically good repair, state of good repair improvements, including larger replacement of signs like those over 83 and other entryway type signage into interstate areas throughout the city of Baltimore. We won't find out about the funding source until later this year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that was one of the things that I noted. I'm on 83 a lot, and it's irksome.
Okay, so, because I think the signage issue is a kind of a big deal in terms of, not just on 83, it is a big deal, but also, because if we're doing enforcement of parking and the sign is faded, we can't enforce the parking, right? If there's, there's even just signs for no dumping and all of the other things that we've been asked for. So you're gonna have a humongous backlog by the time you get the equipment. Is there any way we can help you push that if it's a procurement issue? I mean, we're good at pushing.
I mean, I won't say no. It's something.
Yeah, so thanks, Councilwoman Tyler Chanel, Deputy Director for Local Affairs in the Mayor's Office. What we'll do is we'll follow up on, if you send me over, Director, the list of signs that you know in your district that need to be replaced, to make sure that we have that list first and foremost. And then I'll follow up with the city administrator and procurement on the issue with the fabricator for the signs.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Torrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to have one question about a series of four actual committee requests. The question is related to street teams.
I can't hear you. I'm
Sorry. I'm going to have one question and then four actual committee requests. Street cuts, sorry. The street cuts division has been wonderful in my district because our friends at DPW don't know how to actually adhere to the standards with their actual contractors. For me, they're limited sometimes in terms of like the service requests that they receive versus what we have, and the fact that we've recovered a large sum at one time in, I believe, 2023, over $30,000 in violations from just one DPW contractor alone. And I just want to know, are we planning to increase not only pay, but also the persons in that division, because that is an opportunity to ensure safety, but also to collect revenue, because if we're finding these issues are reoccurring, I think it is the best way to document it, because I will just make it frank, DPW's actual inspectors have failed us, and I want to make sure that people who are noticing the issues can address the safety issues.
Thank you.
You have the request?
Okay.
We are absolutely looking to staff up in our street cuts division as far as inspectors go. Adam, would you like to talk about your specific staffing needs briefly?
So we currently have 4 inspectors on staff that cover the entire city of Baltimore. We recently had one inspector leave for another position. The current staffing levels don't match what was in the group historically. We previously had 3 classified lead inspectors and 2 more general inspectors to kind of handle those activities. I think that would kind of be in line to allow us to address the current slate of work that's happening in the city, and also kind of be proactive in a few other aspects.
So you currently have 4. So what is ideal staffing? Just being transparent, like an actual number of lead inspectors and general inspectors, because I wrote my district one day and I found a coal patch that was 4 inches below the grade of the actual roadway. So,
I think 2 more lead inspectors and 2 more kind of junior inspectors, so it'll be like a 2 level.
okay. And then for my committee requests, I first would want a follow-up on the pedestrian lighting for 41st and Falls, for the crossing blinking lights so people don't get hit at that intersection. And then for Buena Vista in...
Councilman, 40th or 41st?
41st and Falls, First and Falls. We say that intersection, we see the accidents from that intersection. We're looking at 40th Street in, Lord Jesus, oh, that help me. 40 in Buena Vista. 41st in Buena Vista, right near Union Mill. I'm still waiting for confirmation on the ATV for the speed camera for Druid Park for 41st Street. Our friends have increased their speeding again. I would like to make sure that we have an adequate assessment of it, as we are investing heavily in repairing Green Spring and Druid Park Drive, which means that people have a nice roadway that they're not going to wobble on anymore, so they're going to speed faster. I just want to make sure that we address that. The other request is related to Stockton Street in terms of the right-of-way and entry. In addition to that, a follow-up request because of Clifton. I am bewildered that we have not, after 2 years of discussions, that we're not closing the actual street, given the fact that we're building a $16 million recreation center there, and re-identifying that street, re-identifying how to purposely use the entry and exit ways of that street will help my neighbors in that neighborhood to understand not only the fact that we're renovating 32 new homes, we're having a $16 million recreation center, and the traffic patterns on Fulton Avenue have changed. So I just want to make sure that we have a follow-up for that as well, and find out the rationale for the denial for the closure.
May I briefly respond to that? We do have a memo for you regarding the closure, or Had you received it or not yet? Okay, I was just making sure. You said response to the denial. Okay, I just approved a memo to you, so we'll make sure you get that by the week's end.
Thank you. So,
Yeah, I was gonna say, Councilman, just to make sure that we caught all of them, can you just start from the top and let me know when one ends and the other begins, please?
okay, let me run this back. 42nd and Falls, strobe light for pedestrian crossing. 41st and Buena Vista for pedestrian light for crossing. ATV for 41st in Drew Park Drive for a speed camera because speeds have increased again. In addition to that, the follow-up is the right-of-way letter for Stockton to put up our gates. And then in addition to that, the closure of Clifton Avenue directly in front of our new Parkview Recreation Center that we will open in August. In addition to that, the new Charm City television station that we are putting on that same street that we will break ground in next month. So I just want to make sure that when we build nice, beautiful things, that people don't die crossing to get to them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Got it.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Chair, he may need to send just a follow-up email just to make sure that
I'll
we
email
have
it to
all of
you.
them. Okay, thank you, sir.
It's too long. And then we're going to close out today with Councilman Dorsey.
Thanks. There's some real low-hanging fruit in policy making that I'd really like to see addressed. One is maintenance of traffic to make sure that anytime any private entity or anybody is shutting down a sidewalk or a bike lane, that they have to establish something same side of the street immediately adjacent to it and as protected as the entity that's being disrupted.
Shut down, correct. Gotcha.
And this crosswalk restoration is insane, where we've got BGE, DPW, others cutting 2/3 of a sidewalk out and then repaving that section and striping only the portion that they cut and repaved in the continental manner and leaving the angled stripe, old style crosswalk. So you literally have two different crosswalk design patterns in a single crossing. Like anytime anybody is cutting apart any portion of a crosswalk and having to restripe it, they should have to restripe the entire crosswalk in the updated manner. Yes. This is like really easy, I think, low-hanging kind of policy change that also, for me, harkens to complete streets compliance in general.
Yes.
The law is written such that when utility contractors or others are making street cuts, it's not merely when we are in-house or through tech division contractors doing street resurfacing, but like BGE is out there repaving tons of streets in the city, including on collector and arterial roads. And the way the law is written is that too has to comply with complete streets requirements for safety and mobility improvements. And again, to my earlier point, this is all the more reason why it's important for us to have in-house staff to design plans so that they're on the shelf or ready. And when we know that BGE or DPW has some utilities work of some substantial size on some section of a collector or arterial road that's upcoming in the year or two ahead, that we have already designed the changes to make those safety and mobility improvements when they do their restoration, because the law requires that they take on the restoration and improvements. But at the very least, we really need to get this ridiculous crosswalk thing straightened out.
I concur.
How soon can we get the crosswalk thing and the MOT thing?
They should go back to the
How soon can we get those things worked out?
I'm gonna talk to Adam for this.
There are a couple of things. So with the MOT component, the MOTs that are put in place when construction project happens mirrors the state standard, the standards that are put in place with the state. So that would be kind of a conversation on what it would take to kind of deviate from that and kind of having a comprehensive MOT plan for the different situations. The current city code also requires that people restore what they disturb. So that's also something that it's not something I don't think can be changed immediately, but I think committing to doing research on what that would take is something we can commit to.
How much research does it really take to say if you're disturbing a crosswalk and restoring any portion of a crosswalk, like as a distinctly different thing from like, okay, I'm disturbing this portion of like unstriped asphalt or this portion of asphalt that has a dotted white line down it or something like that. That's one thing. Like crosswalks are something unique that have a unique pattern on them. And when they in particular are redone 50% of the way across the street, it's just ridiculous. Like that's something that's unique that I don't think it should be too heavy a lift for us to say, okay, we're gonna tweak our restoration policy to say that if you're doing a crosswalk, you do the whole thing. They don't have to repave the whole thing. They just need to restripe the whole thing.
So I think it's something we need to look at about updating our street cuts policy. So I would say give us some time to take a look at what our existing policy is and how we can look at making an update. Adam did note that it is codified. And so that means subsequently it would be a code change.
It's in the code, it's not just it's in the COBRA and the regulations. Luciano is putting his hand up.
Yeah, so Luciano Diaz, this is in the street cuts regulation, so we'd be looking at a 10-week lead time to modify the regulation.
Okay.
Before having it posted and having it go through a public comment period.
Okay, yeah, I thought this was in regulation. I'll note that this was given as a recommendation when these regulations were written and it was not adopted and no excuse was given, no reason was given, no real, I would even say respectable response was given under director number 2, 3, or 4, not director number 1.
Noted. I will say while we're also looking at it, I mean, it's something we can also take a look at the complete streets component, that if we're looking at the regulatory components of this, we can just kind of do a wide open look at everything while we're in there.
Okay, great. Yeah, and again, the MOT thing is like,
Yep.
there's lots of stuff that's done at the state level that's only appropriate for 50% of the state and isn't appropriate for Baltimore City. Okay, the other thing I want to ask about.
So, Councilman Dorsey, if we can work offline with this, in the interest of everyone, dinner and BPD. So
Can I ask? I got a budgetary question here. Just it'll be a real quick request.
As quick as humanly possible. Yes.
I'd like a cost savings assessment on the capital and maintenance to mount street lights on the side of the road instead of on overhead masts. The masts themselves are expensive and require an additional level of maintenance work, and DC and plenty of other places put their traffic signals on posts on the side of the road, where also it's safer when drivers are looking toward the corner where they're likely to have the potential for pedestrian conflicts if they're making turns. Like, it's ultimately safer to have them looking there at an intersection than on a thing that costs us more to build and maintain. And I think this sort of came up also. Dan earlier was talking about signs blowing over the mastheads and cutting wires and stuff. That's a problem you don't have if you don't have signs dangling on mastheads on wires like that. So I'd like a cost savings analysis, the difference between putting traffic signals and such on mastheads rather than on the side of the road, DC style.
Got you. So using them as kind of their, as I said, utilizing them as like the best practice.
Yeah.
Okay. Clea and or Dan, what are your thoughts as far as? Okay, Dan is coming, sorry.
Dan Mantic, Chief of Traffic Operations. So there's a few issues with that. So mounting traffic signals on the corners on basically 20-foot pedestrian poles is what you're asking, does not meet MUTCD standards. For the site, the traffic signal should be over top of the lane. So that we get into all kinds of issues. Plus, for traffic signals, when you design them, you're supposed to have at least 2 indications. So currently, if you go to most of the traffic signals, like on the mast arm, you have a near and a far, like for a 5-section left turn signal. It makes it very difficult to design and actually get the correct signal configuration when you're putting them on the corners of intersections. In addition, when you start putting them on the corners where the ADA ramps are, now you're getting into ADA issues, and it makes it difficult to basically construct an ADA ramp correctly when you got your poles there.
So happy to have this conversation later offline. As the chair said, it's fine.
I can give you.
It's okay. We'll take this offline. Thank you. Thank you.
We'll get it to you.
All right, thank you, DOT, for attending the hearing today. We are in recess. Thank you. Until 6.